Hogwarts, The Return of Turmoil. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 376 Battle in the Dark. Ronan's name was particularly clear above the empty grave. The moment his voice was heard, dense arrows shot out from the dense weeds. These arrows made by the centaurs reflected the cold light of fine iron under the moonlight, pierced through the air, and shot at the old witch and Lucas from all directions. The centaurs were born warriors, and their archery skills were extremely superb. The arrows were shot unexpectedly, and even Lucas changed his face. Lucas himself was also a very powerful wizard. At the moment the arrows broke through the air, he had quickly cast layers of barrier spells around him, but these barrier spells only blocked the first few arrows. The centaur's arrows were soaked in very powerful potions, which shattered Lucas' barrier spells in one go. However, this also gave Lucas a chance to catch his breath. He jumped to the side and dodged a wave of arrows, but the centaurs were very fast. There was almost no gap in their shooting movements. Before one arrow had left the string, another arrow had already been put on the string and followed closely. When the old witch's originally stiff body heard the sound of arrows breaking through the air, her magic wand emitted a series of gray streams of light. These streams of light split out and met the centaur's arrows. The moment they collided with the centaur's arrows, it was as if corrosive magic was released, directly melting the centaur's arrows. "You centaurs ambushed here early, which really surprised me." The old witch smiled sinisterly. Her movements were very fast, in stark contrast to the staggering appearance of half a foot about to step into the coffin just now. The centaur's arrows did not even break through her defense. At this time, Ronan had already rushed over, his strong body whistling in the air, the horse's hooves were flying, and the horse's neigh was like thunder. "Give us back our things." Ronan growled in a low voice, sprinting and shooting arrows at an incredible speed. "If you want to take back what belongs to you, it depends on whether you have the ability to do it." The old witch waved her wand, and the weeds on the ground where Ronan was running suddenly turned into dark tentacles, grabbing towards Ronan. Ronan was extremely agile, stepped on the tombstone, and passed over the tentacles. He put on an arrow again, and this time the tip of the arrow burst into golden flames, mixed with sharp whistles in the air. The old witch's gray streamer did not corrode his arrow this time. On the contrary, the streamer was ignited and turned into arrows, turning around and shooting at the old witch. "Are you prepared?" The old witch pointed at the ground, and countless pieces of soil splashed up and flew in the air, meeting Ronan's flaming arrow, but the pieces of soil could not stop it at all. Ronan's arrow shuttled through and shot towards the old witch's neck. Ronan had no intention of showing mercy. The centaurs would never start a war with others, but if they were angered, they would fight back in every possible way. When the golden flaming arrow was about to pierce the old witch's neck, a breath of black air suddenly came out of the old witch's shriveled mouth. The black air was very strange, like a pool of sewage, which extinguished the flame of the arrow in an instant. "Go and solve the problem quickly, I'll stop them," the old witch said to Lucas sinisterly. Lucas had already climbed up from the ground, dodging a rain of arrows, and occasionally firing a few purple spells to deal with those arrows. "Humble animals, I'll settle accounts with you later." Lucas snorted coldly, and he had already rushed to the wooden house. But many centaurs were running with iron hooves, aiming their arrows at Lucas again, trying to stop him. But Lucas had already taken out a magnet from his pocket. He pointed his wand at the magnet, and all the arrows shot at him were absorbed by the Locan magnet. He waved his wand and shattered all the arrows, but Lucas obviously did not intend to continue using the Locan magnet, because compared to the Locan magnet, this thing was better at absorbing spells than arrows, and the arrows were still prickly when they flew into his arms. He ran towards the wooden house while firing all kinds of evil spells at the centaurs. On the other side, the old witch screamed shrilly, and her wand emitted dark red light. These lights were like dense earthworms, disappearing in every lonely grave in the mass grave. Then the ground suddenly exploded, and countless broken coffin lids flew and hit the centaurs. The centaurs were originally using the cover of the tombstones to be attacked by the old witch's sudden spell. They didn't have time to react and were hit by the coffin lids. Several centaurs were directly pressed under the coffin lids. Even the tombstone in front of Maureen exploded. When the coffin lid flew towards him, he was startled. He waved his wand and cast a crushing spell, But these coffins were protected by some dark magic of the old witch, and his crushing spell could not destroy the flying coffin lid. Hagrid roared. He stood up, and his huge body hit the coffin lid, knocking it out. "I said I shouldn't have brought you here," Hagrid shouted in a muffled voice. "Hide somewhere quickly, I must kill these two people." Hagrid had already rushed out to meet the coffin lids, but he didn't run far before a dry hand suddenly stretched out from the ground, hugged his legs and tripped him to the ground. Maureen gasped. The old witch didn't know what magic she had cast. The whole cemetery was filled with the sound of bones rubbing against each other. Then, from under the tombstones, a group of skeletons crawled out. These skeletons were still wearing tattered clothes and emitted a strange green light. They seemed to be alive and rushed towards the centaurs and Hagrid. Several centaurs were unable to dodge and were suddenly thrown to the ground by the green skeletons. These skeletons stretched out their long and sharp finger bones and kept stabbing the centaurs' bodies. Many centaurs immediately had finger marks on their bodies, and blood was dripping. Many centaurs cried out in pain. The centaurs were also very strong. Their strength was extraordinary. They quickly turned over and kicked the green skeletons that crawled out of the cemetery into a pile of bones. However, the disassembled bones showed no signs of stopping. They were kicked to pieces and quickly reassembled. They rushed towards the centaurs one after another. There was no pain, and it was impossible to kill them all at once. The latest novels are first published on 69shoe.com. Damn it! Ronan roared angrily. A skeleton scratched a scar on his chest. The iron hoof kicked a skull away, but the skull quickly flew back and continued to bite him and entangle him. Avada Kedavra! The old witch sneered and shot a killing curse at Ronan. Be careful! Hagrid rushed over and knocked Ronan down, narrowly avoiding the killing curse. For Hagrid, those skeletons could not hinder his steps. He could crush a dozen skeletons with one foot, but these skeletons were really difficult to deal with. After Hagrid knocked Ronan down, they continued to cling to him like spiders. On the other side, Maureen himself was also targeted by two green skeletons. He immediately waved his magic wand, flames. A burst of flames instantly engulfed the two green skeletons, but the skeletons suddenly jumped out of the flames and jumped into the air without any damage, rushing towards Maureen below like a cannonball. Maureen ran away. Chapter 377 Melee. The skeletons that jumped out of the cemetery were something that neither the centaurs nor Maureen had expected. The old witch was too scary. I don't know what kind of black magic she used to summon all the skeletons in the mass grave. These skeletons were still emitting black air, and ordinary spells were completely ineffective against them. One of the skeletons fell down, leaving a deep pit on the ground. Fortunately, Maureen dodged quickly and rolled to the side, but another skeleton rushed towards him from the dense weeds. It exuded a foul black air all over its body. This black air was extremely disgusting, just like sewage that had been soaked in the ditch for many years, and it almost made Maureen faint. Solid as a rock, Maureen quickly cast a stone spell in front of him, and the transparent glass separated him from the skeleton. He quickly got up and swung his wand again. 3 more stone glasses also drilled out from all directions and connected together, just like how Pearson was trapped at the beginning, trapping the skeleton firmly in the stone. The skeleton desperately hit the glass cage created by the stone spell. It only hit twice and shattered the stone and glass. This guy was even more powerful than Pearson. Pearson couldn't get rid of his stone spell at first, but the skeleton could do it. It was really terrifying. The fire spell couldn't ignite these skeletons, and even the stone spell would be shattered by the skeleton. How did the old witch do it? She was able to summon all the skeletons in the grave, and she made it so perverted. Doy, can you deal with these skeletons? Maureen jumped off a stone and swung his wand back. The weeds immediately swayed, like tentacles that entangled the skeletons chasing from behind from different places. The grass densely drilled into the gaps between the bones of the skeleton and tied the skeleton tightly. But the bones on the skeleton suddenly scattered, and the sharp broken bones cut through the grass, and then reassembled in another place and continued to pounce on Maureen. Doy! Doy! Doy shook his head desperately, and it had already crawled into Maureen's pocket. You can't only deal with that kind of monster, can you? Maureen found that one of the green skeletons was less than a palm away from him. He quickly used the levitation spell to pull a large stone next to it, and the large stone smashed the skull's head off. Doy, great! Doy shouted while shrinking in Maureen's pocket. You can really only deal with that kind of monster. Maureen probably heard the meaning from Doy's arrogant tone. He no longer had any hope for Doy, otherwise it would be more than enough for Doy to stretch out his claws and flap his flaming wings to tear these things apart. After the skeleton lost its head, it kept turning in circles, baring its teeth and claws to find its own head, and the head was rolling towards its body. Maureen quickly shouted, "Freeze 3 feet." An icicle trapped the rolling head on the ground. The head was still breathing out black air in the ice. The black air actually began to corrode the ice. The ice cracked and cracks appeared one after another. The headless skeleton had found the place where the head was trapped. With a bone claw, the ice immediately broke into pieces. The whole skeleton was reassembled. This damn skeleton, the old witch's black magic is so powerful. Maureen swung his wand, moved the coffin lid over, and flattened the skeleton again. At the same time, he conjured a stream of clear water, covered the skeleton, and froze the skeleton. He cast a swamp spell again, letting the skeleton sink into the swamp. But at this time, another skeleton threw Maureen to the ground from behind, and his forehead hit the stone, almost making him faint. The skeleton used its dry hand bones to strangle Maureen's neck desperately. Maureen's face turned red, and in a hurry he shouted, "Show your edge." The tip of the magic wand emitted a golden light, like a sharp blade, which cut off the skeleton's hand bones in an instant. The skeleton, without the support of the hand bones, could not dodge in time and pressed on Maureen all of a sudden. The stench filled up again, making him almost unable to catch his breath. "You really should brush your teeth and take a shower." Maureen swung the magic wand and cut off the head of the skeleton, then desperately pushed the skeleton away and climbed up. The severed hand bones of the skeleton had been reconnected, and he was about to grab his own skull to install it. Maureen quickly froze it again, and then threw it into the swamp, and then filled the swamp again. No, it seems that these skeletons are unkillable. Maureen soon discovered that the soil and rocks that he had dragged the two skeletons into the swamp were bulging, and the two skeletons were still struggling to climb out. Maureen looked at where the old witch was standing. The old witch was fighting with Ronan. Her old body seemed to contain a black hole. Countless terrifying spells were flying everywhere. Ronan's arrows were not to be outdone. While he was constantly dodging the spells, he also used the bow and arrows with the golden flames to disperse the old witch's spells. But Ronan's way forward was blocked, and he couldn't get close to the old witch. The old witch had to divide her mind to deal with other centaurs neighing in the cemetery. She used skeletons alone to hold back these strong centaurs. Hagrid couldn't get close either. He was huge and the target was very obvious. The old witch cast a blue spell on him, knocking him out and smashing him into a grave pit. Fortunately, the old witch did not use the killing curse, otherwise Hagrid would definitely be in danger. But Maureen also knew that Arnold had told him that the more powerful the spell, the more time it takes to charge. A spell like Avada Kedavra cannot be cast instantly and requires a certain amount of time to charge. Moreover, this kind of spell consumes a lot of energy. Even the cruel and ruthless dark wizards will not use the killing curse every time they fight. Facing Ronan's swift and violent arrows, the old witch could not give her time to charge and use the killing curse. But even if she did not use the killing curse, these fierce spells were enough to make the centaurs difficult. A centaur was hit by her yellow spell, screamed, and fell to the ground, his life or death unknown. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Hagrid was struggling to climb out of the grave. The grave was not as big as his body, but he fell headfirst into it. Before he could climb up, countless skeletons fell on him. Two skeletons even lifted a coffin lid and pressed it on Hagrid. Maureen knew that the magic on these skeletons must be on the old witch. As long as the old witch was defeated, all the skeletons should stop. Petrify. Maureen took advantage of the old witch's inattention and fired a petrification spell at the old witch from the bushes on the side. However, before the petrification spell flew to the old witch, it was hit by another gray spell, and Maureen's petrification spell actually turned in the air and flew towards him. Spell jump! Maureen shouted quickly and transferred his petrification spell to the back of the old witch, but the old witch was not Zimmerman. She was much more skilled than Zimmerman. At the moment when Maureen's spell jumped out of the air, the old witch flicked her wand and dissolved the petrification spell. She also found Maureen in the bushes. "Invisible man, are you here too?" The old witch laughed miserably at Maureen. "I want a recommendation vote, but I haven't received 10,000 recommendation votes yet. I really don't know what to say. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 378 Lost Again. The old witch's eyes were shining strangely. Wherever her eyes went, the weeds moved aside, as if they couldn't stand the pressure of her eyes. Maureen, who was hiding in the bushes, was suddenly exposed to the old witch. "I've always been curious about you." The old witch looked at Maureen and spoke, while she was still dealing with Ronan with ease. "What can you do? Invisible man? Stand up and show me your magic." While the old witch was waving her wand to dodge several arrows, she also took the time to shoot a green spell at Maureen. The spell came towards Maureen, and Maureen quickly jumped to the side to avoid the spell. The spell hit Maureen's feet. Before Maureen could breathe a sigh of relief, several white bone claws suddenly emerged from his feet and grabbed Maureen's ankles. Maureen couldn't dodge in time and was dragged to the ground. A little disappointed, the old witch laughed and fired another blue curse at Maureen. "I had higher expectations of you." "Damn it." Maureen's ankle was grabbed, and when he was about to smash those bone claws, the old witch's spell was whistling again. He struggled to throw out a barrier spell, which collided with a blue curse. The blue spell was hit by Maureen's barrier spell and turned at an angle, but this evil spell lifted this oil next to it, and countless oil fell on his face, making his skin hurt. "You'd better stay by the side." The old witch sneered and fired a coma spell at Maureen. Her magic level was much higher than Maureen's, and the coma spells she cast were very fast. Maureen had no time to react. He could only grit his teeth, wave his wand, and shout again, "Spell jump!" A golden halo appeared in front of him, swallowing the old witch's coma spell, but he soon found something wrong. What he used spell jump to transfer was the petrification spell he had fired. He could transfer his own spell, but the old witch's coma spell was too powerful, which was beyond his tolerance. He couldn't guide the coma spell out. Walker once told him that if he couldn't transfer out with spell jump, he would be equivalent to being cursed. Maureen secretly cried out in his heart, "Not good." He felt a blow to his chest and then lost consciousness. On the other side, Hagrid had already broken free from the grave and knocked away the skeleton that was pressing on him. He was looking for a place to avoid the witch's spell, while shouting, "Crazy! I said I shouldn't bring him here. Maureen, where are you?" He didn't see Maureen, and hurriedly shouted to Ronan, "Ronan, where's Maureen?" "I don't know." Ronan ducked his head to avoid the witch's red spell, and he didn't find Maureen's trace. He immediately pulled out a very small arrow from his back. The arrow was burning with flames. He didn't put the arrow on the bow, but threw it directly. The flaming arrow turned a corner in the air, as if it had a spirit, and sank into the grass, and stuck on the small coal lamp in Maureen's pocket in the chaotic weeds. "There. Odea, go protect Maureen," Ronan shouted. "I know." Odea kicked the skeleton in front of him away, turned around and ran towards the light from the arrow in Maureen's pocket. He shot an arrow to knock out the witch's spell, stepped sideways beside Maureen, raised his hard horse hoof, kicked the bone claw that was holding Maureen's ankle to pieces, and picked Maureen up from the ground. "Are you okay?" Odea shouted anxiously. But he didn't notice that the kerosene lamp with a flickering flame in Maureen's pocket fell down and fell on the grass, and the flame went out all of a sudden. When the flame went out, it seemed that a gust of wind suddenly blew over. Swish! Ronan was slightly stunned. He had just hugged Maureen the moment before, and the next moment his hands were suddenly empty, as if Maureen had apparated away and disappeared directly in his hands. But this was impossible. The centaurs used their magic to block this place. Even the old witch couldn't apparate away, let alone Maureen. Odea saw the broken kerosene lamp on the ground, his face changed, as if he remembered something, and exclaimed, "Oh no, Ronan. He's lost." Bang. A dull sound. Ouch! Maureen cried out in pain. He felt as if he was held in the air by someone, but the other party suddenly let go, and then he fell to the ground. This fall woke him up from his coma. What the hell? Maureen touched his buttocks. There was a scar on his forehead that was scratched by the skeleton just now, and it was aching. He sat up from the ground with a grin, and then remembered that he was still fighting a group of skeletons. He fumbled around and found that because it was too dark, he didn't know where his wand fell. My wand, my wand. Fluorescent flash. A light flashed at Maureen's fingertips. With the help of this light, he found that his wand had rolled under a square stool. He ran over and picked up his wand from the leg of the stool. But then he was stunned. Wait, a square stool? Why is there a stool in the mass grave? He immediately raised his wand alertly and looked around. He suddenly realized that the skeletons that were snarling in the cemetery just now seemed to have disappeared. There was no sound of the centaur's solid iron hooves trampling. Whether it was the old witch, Lucas, or Hagrid, they all disappeared. Doy climbed onto his shoulders, pulled his ears nervously, and pointed desperately at the sky. The latest novels are published on the 69th book bar. No way. Maureen felt his scalp tingling. He raised his head and glanced at the sky. The 2 moons in the sky were too dazzling. Why do you always run here? Maureen sighed helplessly. He touched his pocket. Sure enough, the kerosene lamp he took from the centaur's campfire was gone. He probably understood the situation. If there was a black cube hidden in the dilapidated cabin in the cemetery, it meant that the black cube would take him to this place when he was not paying attention. Just thinking of this, he became nervous again, because compared to the skeleton summoned by the old witch, this place was inhabited by more terrifying monsters. Although those skeletons could not be killed, they could at least be dealt with, but these monsters were not easy to deal with. There was no surprise. There were countless monsters flying in the sky. These monsters had different shapes and were much more ferocious than the long-armed bats that Dumbledore encountered that day. There were 2 monsters with lion heads and long ears swooping down. Run, run. Maureen cursed inwardly, feeling that he had just escaped from the tiger's den and entered the wolf's den. This bad luck kept happening one after another, and it was endless. But he stopped after running only 2 steps, because he found that there were rows of tall sunflowers growing around him. These sunflowers grew to his neck, and some were even taller than him. The 2 lion-headed monsters with long ears seemed not to see him this time. They continued to fight and bite each other as they flew over his head and disappeared in the distance. Huh? Can't they see me? Maureen felt a little relieved. He squatted down quickly. Although the 2 monsters might be too absorbed in the fight and ignored him, he tried to hide as much as possible. Doy, it's awesome. Doy also looked a little puzzled. It was about to pounce and bite others. Doy, it's not awesome today. We have to leave here quickly. Maureen sat on the ground and closed his eyes, ready to take a deep breath and leave this damn place. But he still couldn't do it this time. After 2 minutes, when he opened his eyes, he was still in the sunflower field. Not only that, there was a rustling sound from the other side of the sunflower field, as if something was dragging on the ground and coming towards this side. Maureen immediately tensed up. Chapter 379 Breaking into Someone Else's Garden. Maureen carefully held his wand. Doy was showing 2 rows of small teeth on his shoulder, trying to look ferocious, ready to hit at any time. But it was too cute when it was not deformed. Even when it was grinning, it seemed to be acting cute and making faces. It was not scary at all. The sunflowers in front made a rustling sound, as if some monster pushed the sunflowers aside and walked towards this side. The sunflowers began to move slightly to the sides, and the sound was getting closer and closer. Maureen kept his composure. He brought his wand with him when he encountered the monster this time. Even if he couldn't beat it, he didn't have to be as embarrassed as he was last time when he went to rescue Unran. As long as he waited for the monster to show its head, he would directly use a freezing spell on it to freeze it into an ice cream, and then let Doy pounce on it and bite it wildly. If there were only 1 or 2 monsters, Doy could still deal with it. A shadow slowly appeared in front of Maureen. Maureen shouted without hesitation, "Freeze 3 feet." A gust of cold air rushed out, but the other party suddenly said "Huh" and dodged away. Then a vague voice came, "Who is there?" "It's a person." Maureen breathed a sigh of relief and felt a little happy. Sorry, I thought it was a monster in the sky," Maureen said hurriedly. He remembered that this place not only had those ferocious monsters that could fly and hide, but also some weirdos with shining eyes. These weirdos could walk on the wall as if they were flat ground. "Monsters in the sky will not come to my garden casually," the person outside continued. "Garden." Maureen heard that the voice should be a man. The other party's tone seemed very calm. He was not angry because Maureen used a spell on him. Maureen thought about it and felt that he should go out. He stood up and comforted Doy, who was about to transform, then walked around the sunflowers and walked towards the sound in front. After walking out of the sunflower field, Maureen realized that this sunflower field was not very big. There was a row of fences not far away. He seemed to be in a small farmyard in the countryside. The small yard was surrounded by a row of uneven wooden fences. In front of it was a small house with flickering lights. In front of the sunflower field stood an old man with light brown eyes. The other person's eyes were shining, which reminded Maureen that his eyes were probably also shining at this moment. He looked at the old man. The old man had messy hair, a calm face, a scar at the corner of his eyebrow, and was wearing a black plaid shirt with the sleeves rolled up. In his hand, he was holding a large plastic bag. The sound of dragging on the ground just now was made by this plastic bag. "Sorry, I accidentally fell in here." Maureen couldn't help but look up and look at the monsters fighting in the sky again. He was a little worried. Standing in such a wide place would easily attract the attention of the monsters. If the monsters in the sky suddenly got tired of fighting and jumped down to chase him, it would not be fun. No one can fall into someone else's house without permission, young man. The old man stared at Maureen, frowning, as if thinking about something. Is that so? Maureen didn't know how to answer. He was still focusing on the monsters in the sky. If something went wrong, he would run away immediately. But the old man seemed to see what Maureen was thinking. The old man glanced at the monsters in the sky and didn't seem to care about the monsters fighting. He turned his attention back to Maureen. "They won't get in here, if you're worried about them." "Can get in? That's good." Maureen finally felt relieved. He remembered that he shouldn't go out after dark. It seemed that as long as he was within the range of her house, no monster would bother him. "Where are you from?" The old man looked at Maureen. "Hogwarts, a cemetery. I can't explain it clearly. I just came in suddenly." Maureen said vaguely. "You're the same as us?" The old man put down the bag in his hand. His face suddenly became a little confused, and then he said, "You're different from us." It was this familiar word again. Maureen didn't understand at all what was different between him and the other party. The old man looked at him and suddenly asked again, "Where did you say you came from?" Maureen thought he didn't explain it clearly, so he repeated, "Hogwarts, a cemetery. We are trying to stop the conspiracy of two dark wizards. Somehow, I was brought here directly." Cemetery. The old man's light brown eyes flickered slightly, and the light in his eyes was particularly clear in the dark night. He said, "You fell from the cemetery to my garden. You are different from us, so you are." The old man suddenly took a breath and looked at Maureen with some doubt. Maureen looked at the old man in confusion. "You are the Invisible Man, right?" The old man was surprised. "Huh? You also know about the Invisible Man?" Maureen complained in his heart. "Why does it seem that everyone knows about the Invisible Man? Why don't I know it? The latest novels are first published on the 6th-9th book bar. You must have been close to the Black Cube. This is bad." The old man seemed a little anxious. Maureen was very surprised. He didn't expect the old man to know the existence of the Black Cube. "Yes, I probably was close to the Black Cube." "Do you know the Black Cube, sir? You should go back," the old man said in a deep voice. "I want to go back, but I don't know how to go back." Maureen felt that there should be no danger, so he put down his wand and said, "If you can help me. Although going back may not be much better than this place, after all, there are a lot of skeletons fighting with the centaurs over there, but Arnok warned him last time that if he came here, he must leave as soon as possible." He felt that it was right to listen to Arnok. And he had to go back quickly to stop Lucas from getting the Black Cube. "I've heard of your name. Your name is Maureen, right?" the old man asked seriously. Maureen was really surprised now. "You know my name?" Maureen looked at the old man in surprise. He was sure that he didn't know this person. He was worried about those monsters just now and didn't have time to introduce himself. But the other party actually said his name all of a sudden. "Yes, I know," the old man said seriously. "You shouldn't be here, you are not welcome here." Maureen opened his mouth, and he found that he seemed to be the unwelcome person again. Last time he went to the Forbidden Forest, the centaurs did not welcome him. Now he came to an inexplicable place and was rejected by them again. Can't there be a place that welcomes him? "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you, sir." Maureen was a little uneasy. What if the old man did not welcome him and drove him out of the yard? What if he was chased by those monsters? Chapter 380 People in the Flames. But the old man didn't seem to want to drive him out of his yard. He kicked the bag on the ground into the corner, pressed it with a stone, then looked around and said, "Come with me." "Where to?" Maureen asked in confusion. The old man hurried over, grabbed Maureen's arm, and pulled Maureen into the house without saying anything. "Come in." "Oh, thank you." Maureen looked up at the monsters that occasionally flew across the sky, and he thought it wouldn't be a bad thing to go into the house to avoid it. I thought you didn't welcome me," Maureen said in confusion. If he didn't think the old man would hurt him, he wouldn't have let the old man pull him like this without any precautions. But the old man didn't answer him. He walked to the door of the wooden house, opened the door, and then forced Maureen in. This is a comfortable little house with a red carpet on the floor, a few bottles of wine on the red coffee table, and a faint scent of pine flowers in the whole room. There are many magic books on the bookshelf next to it, and a pleasant and warm fire is burning in the fireplace opposite. "Yes, I don't welcome you, but you have to come in." The old man closed the door behind Maureen. He glanced at the clock on the opposite wall and said, "It's 9:12 now. You fell into my garden at 9:03. Remember this time. Is this time important?" Maureen was a little surprised by the old man's words. He didn't understand what the old man was talking about. "Yes, it is very important. I need to call someone. Sit down first. You have a wound on your forehead." The old man pushed a chair over and asked Maureen to sit down. Then he hurried to the fireplace, grabbed a handful of emerald green powder from the box on the fireplace and threw it into the flame. The flame suddenly turned blue. "Is there also flue powder here?" Maureen felt very novel. The only difference was that the flue powder in their place was green, like a ball of green plants burning, but the flue powder here was crystal clear blue. The old man did not answer Maureen's words. He stuck his head into the blue flame and shouted loudly, "Albert! Are you home?" "What?" "Darrow, I'm taking a bath." A leisurely voice came from the blue flame, and it seemed to be accompanied by the sound of running water. Maureen listened slightly. Why did this voice sound familiar? "Wrap up your damn bathrobe, Albert, and come here quickly. That kid, Maureen Walker, I remember you called him that, he fell into my garden." Old Darrow shouted impatiently, and he pulled his head back from the blue flame. "What?" The voice of the man opposite sounded very surprised, and soon a burst of hurried footsteps sounded in the blue flame, as if the sound of slippers dragging on the floor, and then the blue flame boiled again, and a figure emerged from the flame. This man had playful blue eyes, a head full of white hair with water droplets on the ends of his hair. He was wrapped in a white bathrobe and had a pair of slippers on his feet. As soon as he came in, his eyes swept around and fell on Maureen, who was sitting on the sofa. "Smelly boy. What are you doing here?" The familiar voice was a little exasperated. Maureen suddenly jumped up from the sofa, as if the sofa had suddenly grown thorns. He looked at the old man in front of him in disbelief. "Mr. Arnott. You, why are you here?" Maureen opened his mouth wide enough to swallow an apple. He was completely confused. Arnott walked over and knocked Maureen's head in annoyance. "Didn't I tell you not to come? This place is not suitable for you." Arnott took another look at Maureen's messy clothes. His clothes on his chest were still stained with mud, and some places were scratched by the skeleton's hands. "Why do you have black magic?" Arnott pointed at the tear on Maureen's clothes and asked, "Did you fight with others again? Green blood is flowing from your forehead." "Green blood? Do I bleed green again?" Maureen then remembered that he had been scratched on the forehead by the skeleton. He touched his forehead and found a finger-long scar there, which was slightly painful. He looked at his finger again and found that the blood on his finger was really green. "Wow, have I mutated? You big-headed ghost. You have been hit by black magic." Arnott glared at Maureen unhappily. "You have no ability all day and still run out to fight with others." "I didn't mean it, okay?" Maureen muttered, then remembered something and said, "Didn't you ask me to stop that, Lucas?" "Did I say that?" Arnott glared at Maureen. Maureen thought about it very seriously, then nodded. "I did." Arnott muttered something in a low voice, and Maureen didn't hear what he said clearly. He thought about it, and then carefully reached out and poked Arnott's arm. He found that Arnott's arm was warm, and he couldn't help pinching it again. He looked at Arnott again. The expression of blowing his beard and glaring his eyes didn't seem to be disguised by others, let alone some illusion magic. The latest novels are published on the 6th-9th book bar. "I'm real, don't poke me." Arnott wiped his wet beard on his bathrobe. "The goods are genuine. At least I'm sure now." Maureen was very happy. No matter what, in this unfamiliar place full of monsters, with Arnott, it's always safe. He hasn't heard from Arnott for several months. After the last time at the Ministry of Magic, Maureen accidentally mentioned to Arnott that he went to this place with 2 moons, and then Arnott and Lady Real looked strange, hurriedly packed their luggage, and ran away without saying anything. Who would have thought that he would see Arnott in such a strange place? And this old naughty guy was still leisurely wrapped in a bathrobe, looking very comfortable. Where is this place? What are you doing here? Vacation. Maureen had many questions in his mind. What vacation? Arnok said unhappily, give me your wand. I forgot to bring it. Maureen handed the wand to Arnok. Arnok knotted his big bathrobe, turned his bath towel into a thick blue nightgown, grumbled and complained, and then knocked Maureen's head again. Maureen shrank his head back in pain. Don't move, I'll treat your wound. Arnok pointed the magic wand at the scar on Maureen's forehead and whispered a difficult spell. Maureen felt as if a strange green smoke came out of his body, and his forehead didn't hurt so much. Why is the evil curse on you so powerful? Or is it necromancy? Did you meet Moira? Arnok returned the magic wand to Maureen. Moira? What is that? Is that the name of the skeleton? Maureen asked with interest. That's a witch, a very ugly old witch, with a face like a pile of cow dung. Arnok's description was really simple and straightforward. Oh, yes. That old witch. She has no teeth, her mouth is as black as a hollow old witch, and the wrinkles on her face are like a pile of cow dung. Oh, and she is a master of arithmetic divination. Maureen nodded quickly. I knew it was her. This guy is doing bad things again. Arnok said with a curse. Chapter 381 Arnold's Instructions. This old witch is with Lucas. That's right. Lucas is looking for the black cube. Maureen said impatiently. Sure enough, someone has turned their attention to the black cube. Old Darrow next to him snorted coldly. Maureen then realized that he was so happy to see Arnold that he forgot that there was another person in the room. Sorry, I was so presumptuous just now. Maureen said quickly, my name is Maureen. Oh yes, you already know my name. You call me Darrow. Old Darrow sat on the sofa with a serious expression, and looked Maureen up and down. So is this true? Someone really plans to do that? Albert. Old Darrow turned his head and asked Arnold. Albert. Maureen raised his eyebrows. From Arnold Aglaba to Bobby Singh, to the current Albert, who knows what Arnold's real name is? Maureen said helplessly, let me think about it. Albert is your middle name again, isn't it? Don't cross it. Arnold ignored Maureen's words. He crossed his legs, frowned, and said after a while, tell me the story. How did you get here? Maureen told the story of the centaur. The centaur lost a black magic cube and was punished. Then he gave the centaur a photo of Lucas. The centaur used the divination magic of the campfire to predict the next move of Lucas and the old witch, and ambushed the old witch in advance. But the old witch was too powerful, and then he ran to this place because he was too close to the black magic cube. So where is this place? Maureen couldn't help asking. This was not the first time he came here. Every time he came here, he would see the inexplicable moon and people with glowing eyes. From time to time, he would have to deal with monsters and be chased by monsters. Speaking of glowing eyes, Maureen suddenly found that Arnold's eyes were still blue, like the clear sky, but without emitting light. But the old Darrow who was sitting next to him still had brown eyes, which was very strange. Maureen remembered that his eyes also glowed. Why don't your eyes glow? Maureen asked curiously. That's not the point. Arnok tapped his knees lightly with his fingers. He thought for a long time, then asked, is Lucas also looking for the black cube today? Yes. By the way, he has found 10. Lucas has made 10 collapsed balls. Maureen remembered that last time at a Muggle opera house, Anderson from the Ministry of Magic's Reversal Incident Team said that he had encountered the same thing 10 times. But then he thought of the black cube at the Centaur's Lost. Anderson didn't count this at all. Maureen changed his words again and said, it should be 11. Then he thought about why he came here again, and slapped his head. No. Lucas and the old witch were in the cemetery at night, and now they may have got the 12th one. Maureen remembered that there were 12 symbols in total. If the 12 symbols represented 12 black cubes, then didn't it mean that Lucas had already got all the black cubes? But Arnold shook his head and said, he can't have gotten so many. I estimate that he can only get 8 at most, and there are still 4 that he hasn't got. You seem very sure, Mr. Arnold. Maureen looked at Arnold in confusion. In fact, Maureen was not very clear whether Lucas had gotten so many black cubes. Although Lucas did make 10 big balls, it did not necessarily mean that all 10 big balls were related to the black cubes. After all, the big balls were made of Locke's magnet. If Lucas used this magnet to deal with the staff of the Ministry of Magic, it was possible. What do you think I came to this shitty place for? Arnold cursed. Oh, are you here to investigate the black cube? Maureen looked at Arnok, then at old Mr. Darrow, and he soon understood, because old Darrow obviously knew about the black cube and his name, and it didn't seem to be a coincidence. I guess so, I didn't come here just for this matter, and, of course, this is my main purpose for coming here. Darrow knows where the black cube is. You fell from that cemetery to here. How should I put it? That place is special. There is a magical connection point. It's a good thing you fell into someone's garden. If you fell outside the garden, you would probably be a snack for those monsters. Arnok said. Maureen nodded, and secretly sweated. He had no way to deal with those monsters, not to mention him. Even Professor Kane and the others couldn't deal with this monster. Maureen had a lot of questions in his mind, and he continued to ask, then where is this place? I heard from the magazine that this place is some kind of abyss. I don't even know how I got here. Mr. Arnok, how did you get here? It took me a lot of effort to get in. Anyway, I can't go back for a while, but you have to go back immediately to stop that Moira and Lucas from getting the black cube, and then, wait for me. Arnok stood up hurriedly, ran towards the fireplace, disappeared in the flames, and came back a minute later with a wand and a piece of tattered parchment in his hand. I'm investigating the matter of the black cube. It's been so long that we don't even know where these boxes were thrown. You should find a way to get the black cube in the cemetery first. It must not fall into the hands of Paingid. He has been hiding in the painting and investigating for so many years. He must know about that matter. Fortunately, I'm not a pushover either. We have to get there before him. The latest novel is first published on 69 Shuba. Arnok looked at the worn parchment and said a lot of things. Maureen felt that it was unreliable. Old Darrow looked at the clock on the wall and said, Albert, he came at 9:03, and now it's 9:25. He has to leave. Arnok reacted and quickly stuffed the parchment in his hand into Maureen's hand, then couldn't wait to pull Maureen up and pushed him towards the door without saying anything. Hurry up and leave. You can't stay here for more than half an hour. When you get a black cube, wrap it with this parchment. It will isolate the black cube's aura. Why can't it be more than half an hour? Maureen asked, puzzled. I don't have time to explain now. Remember, don't get close to the black cube after dusk. It won't be a problem if you get close to the black cube during the day, but after dusk, if you don't have the guiding light of the centaur, you will run here. If you stay here for too long, you will get into big trouble. This is not a joke. Arnok opened the door of the room and pushed Maureen back into the yard. But I can't beat that old witch even if I go back now. Maureen looked at Arnok's anxious expression and muttered in his heart. Arnok overestimated his strength. Although his magic was better than other students, it was still quite difficult for him to deal with adult wizards. He would definitely lose to Lucas one-on-one, let alone the old witch. I'll teach you how to deal with that crazy woman. Arnok quickly told Maureen how to deal with the old witch. Maureen was confused after hearing it. Arnok, are you serious? Maureen felt that Arnok's method was a little unreliable. She is a very powerful old witch. How could she be defeated by such a strange method? Chapter 382 Go back. It's not like they'll be defeated, but at least you can delay the time. By the way, using fire is useless against those undead skeletons. Use lightning to strike their eye sockets. You have to hit the eye sockets. Once you hit the eye sockets, the undead skeletons will basically be useless. Arnok instructed again. Then how can I get back? Maureen asked. Old Darrow pulled Maureen towards an iron fence exit in the garden. The iron fence had a simple wooden door. The wooden door was a buckle that could be opened with a slight pull. Leave the house, then close your eyes and think hard about where you want to go. When your eyes feel sore, you will go back. Arnok looked up at the night sky, then said, remember, if you get the Rubik's Cube, don't tell anyone, not even the professors at school, because the black cube is very dangerous and is a very ancient magic item. Now I guess no one knows about its existence. I'm worried that they will open it, and improper operation will cause big trouble. You should already know that. You must get it. Oh, it's really a piece of cake to snatch the black cube from the old witch and Lucas. Arnok. Maureen muttered, you have so much confidence in me, I'm so moved. But the problem is that I have to get it first. Stop talking nonsense, it's another matter if you can't get it. But if you are lucky and get it, wrap it in the parchment I gave you, so that it will temporarily block its breath and won't affect you. Then give it to me in the painting, he knows how to hide it. Arnok said again. There were two monsters fighting desperately in the sky above the yard. One of the monsters with a wolf head and a snake body tore a lion-headed dog head with large wings into pieces. A bloody 2-meter-long broken leg fell from the sky, but when it was about to hit the garden, an invisible barrier above the garden bounced a broken leg away. Maureen found that this place was still very magical. Although there were countless monsters fighting desperately in the night sky outside, this simple garden was like a solid fortress, blocking all the monsters outside. Can I come again next time? Maureen thought that if he got a black magic cube, he could apper it to the cemetery at dusk next time, and then come here to find Arnok, and then ask about the matter clearly. But Arnok and Old Darrow shouted at the same time, no. Then Maureen was rudely pushed out of the fence of Old Darrow's garden by Arnok. Leave quickly. Arnok urged, don't try. You are lucky to fall into the garden this time. If you are unlucky and fall outside and are eaten by monsters, where should I find you next time? In the monster's feces. Okay. If you don't want to come, then don't come. As if I am willing to come. Maureen sighed. Arnok's threat was really simple and crude. Not far away, the monster with a wolf head and a snake body was gnawing on the broken legs of the prey that had just been torn apart by it. At the moment when Maureen was pushed out of the garden, it seemed to smell something. Its dark red eyes suddenly looked towards Maureen, and then it let out a shrill scream, and then it actually rushed towards Maureen. Maureen was shocked. He turned around and ran back to the garden. Arnok, I can't deal with this monster, bang. Arnok had raised his wand in the garden and knocked the monster that found Maureen away. The monster let out a painful howl and soon fell into a ravine and disappeared. Wow, that's amazing. Maureen exclaimed. When these monsters were in the stadium, the Ministry of Magic couldn't deal with them. Unexpectedly, Arnold easily solved them. It turned out that Arnold was reliable. I'll deal with these little punks, you go quickly. Arnok warned unhappily, you should only be able to go back and forth once a day, and you don't have to worry about coming here again when you go back. But next time you must remember to bring a centaur's fire with you. Okay. Maureen hurried out, then closed his eyes, desperately thinking about the cemetery, and after a moment he asked again, by the way, Arnok, is there any way to solve the centaur's curse? The centaur's curse? I remember the old woman mentioned it a few days ago. If you want to help the centaurs, let the girl named Inran put her hand into the campfire and stir it, and draw all the divination curse to you. Anyway, you won't be hurt by the divination curse. Your skin is thicker than the slippers on my feet, and you are immune to all poisons. Hey, that's too hurtful. Mr. Arnok. Maureen couldn't help but said, although my skin is thicker, you can be more tactful. Soon he could no longer hear what Arnok was saying. It was as if there was some wind whistling around him. Then he heard the sound of many arrows piercing the air, as well as the sound of the centaur's iron hooves trampling and the roar of battle. These sounds were dreamy at first, as if they were echoing across the distant valley. Then all the sounds were gradually pulled to his ears, becoming more and more real. Maureen quickly opened his eyes. There was damp soil all around, and a disgusting smell of stale decay hit his nose, almost choking him. He found himself standing in a coffin pit. What bad luck! How did I get into a coffin? Maureen pulled his feet out of a pile of black rags with disgust. These rags seemed to be the clothes of a dead person. Those dead skeletons were in a hurry to go outside to bite the centaurs, and they didn't even wear clothes. He waved his magic wand and turned the dirt beside the coffin into stairs, then climbed up the stairs. Arrows were still whistling outside, and the witch's spells were still flying everywhere. Many places were already burning with flames. Maureen stepped out and accidentally stepped on a hand bone, almost tripping. Next to the coffin pit was a broken coffin lid, which had been smashed in half. A skeleton was struggling to get up from under the coffin lid, and the bone parts of its body were being reassembled, ready to rejoin the battlefield. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. When Maureen climbed out of the coffin, the hand bone he stepped on belonged to the skeleton. The skeleton spotted Maureen and immediately hissed at him. Its entire skull was emitting black smoke, and its empty eye sockets were staring at Maureen in a dark manner, as if it couldn't wait to pounce on him. But Maureen was more confident this time. What are you looking at? Are you the only one allowed to climb out of the coffin? Are others not allowed to climb out? Maureen quickly stuffed the parchment that Arnold had given him into his pocket, then took out his magic wand and pointed it at the skull of the skeleton, shouting, "Wind and thunder!" A blue electric spark shot out from Maureen's magic wand and suddenly poured into the eyes of the undead skeleton. Lightning penetrated from the skeleton's eyes and gathered all over its body. The undead skeleton kept twitching, and then with a crash, all the bones in its body seemed to fall apart, and it rolled out, shattered into pieces and fell into a mess, unable to move any more. Arnok is so powerful, Maureen exclaimed. If he had known earlier that he could use lightning magic to shock these undead skeletons, he wouldn't have been in such a miserable state. Chapter 383 Horseback Riding. Maureen was now on a slope. When he went there just now, he fell into Old Darrow's garden, but the place he came back from was obviously different from the place he went to. He found that Ronan and the others were still fighting with the old witch. Countless arrows and spells of different colors collided with each other, making explosions. He quickly cleared the messy weeds in front of him, and then ran up the slope. He saw two undead skeletons in front of him, pressing down on a snow-white centaur and scratching everywhere. The centaur had been scratched with various scars. Maureen recognized that the centaur was Garrett, the guy who was scared to death to shake hands with him. Wind and thunder sound. Maureen raised his wand again, and while the two undead skeletons were not prepared, two lightning bolts shot into their eye sockets, and the two undead skeletons immediately scattered into a pile of incomplete bones. He shouted to Garrett, "Garrett, use lightning magic. Do you centaurs know lightning?" Garrett was already covered with the wounds, with a lot of green blood flowing on his chest. When he got up from the ground, he stumbled and almost lost his balance. He looked seriously injured. "Lightning? No, we don't know lightning magic." Garrett looked very bad, but he reached out to the quiver behind him, pulled out an arrow, put it back on the string, and shot it at one of the undead skeletons. Maureen found that there was only one arrow left in Garrett's quiver. The centaurs had specially prepared hundreds of arrows for this battle. They were strong and sturdy, so they could carry so many arrows. He had just taken the time to visit Old Darrow for half an hour. The battle here was also very fierce, and many centaurs' arrows were also used up. "Damn, I'm out of arrows." Garrett's quiver was completely empty. "I'll help you." Maureen fumbled on the ground, quickly picked up an arrow from the crack in the stone, and then used his magic wand to stuff the arrow into Garrett's quiver, and whispered, "Copy in groups." Garrett's quiver was immediately filled with arrows. Although these copied arrows were not as hard as the arrows made by the centaurs, and there were not so many special plant medicines on them, they could at least be regarded as ordinary arrows. Garrett's eyes lit up slightly. "Very good, this magic. You see, wizards are still useful, right?" Maureen said. Before Garrett answered, the old witch's shrill laughter came from a distance, and then Maureen saw Hagrid's body rolling down the hillside like a small hill. Many undead skeletons were climbing up the hillside, but when Hagrid rolled down, his heavy body was like bowling, and he knocked the standing undead skeletons away at once. The moonlight shone on the hillside, and countless skulls, hand bones, pelvises, spines, etc. flew around on the hillside. Hagrid's body directly destroyed a large area. Maureen almost laughed at this weird scene. "Sorry, I shouldn't laugh." Maureen felt that this was not polite. He hurriedly looked at Hagrid below, wanting to know if Hagrid was in trouble. The old witch's magic was too powerful. She was not at a disadvantage against so many centaurs alone, not to mention that she had to deal with Hagrid, who had the blood of a giant. After Hagrid was hit by the old witch's spell, he did not fall down. He quickly climbed up from the bottom of the hillside, patted his clothes, and then raised a wheel-sized stone next to him. "Shameless, despicable and dirty old bastard, I will smash you to death." Hagrid roared, and the stone in his hand drew an arc in the air like a cannonball and smashed towards the old witch. But his big stone was smashed to pieces by the witch's spell before it could reach him. On the other side, Lucas had disappeared. He must have gone into the dilapidated cabin, looking for the whereabouts of the black cube. 7 or 8 centaurs were dealing with the undead skeletons while shooting arrows into the cabin. The dilapidated cabin was originally protected by special magic, but now it had been riddled with holes by the centaurs' arrows. The magic had long been broken, and the door frame was even deformed by the arrows. Several centaurs wanted to rush into the cabin to stop Lucas, but they were stopped by the witch's undead skeletons. Ronan and Odia were dealing with a witch, and their arrows had run out of arrows. They could only keep running to avoid the witch's spells, and at the same time they bent down to pick up the bows and arrows that had fallen on the ground and restring them to attack the witch. Maureen hurriedly ran up the hillside. He wanted to help deal with the old witch. Although Arnok's method seemed incredible to him, he couldn't care less at this time, because so many centaurs were still at a disadvantage against an old witch. Now he could only trust our luck. A dead skeleton suddenly jumped out from the weeds and knocked Maureen to the ground. Maureen couldn't dodge in time and rolled down the hillside again. Then he and the skeleton hit a tree together. If Maureen hadn't cast a slowing spell in time, he would have been in trouble. Damn it. Wind and thunder. Maureen pulled his wand hard to poke the dead skeleton that pounced on him, but the dead skeleton stuck him, making his lightning magic fail. But at this time, an iron hoof suddenly flew over and kicked the dead skeleton's head away. The headless dead skeleton staggered and groped, still holding Maureen's feet tightly. Great, you're here. Odia saw Maureen's feet being caught in the darkness, and his voice sounded relieved. He quickly raised his hoof again and kicked the skeleton's bones to pieces. I thought you were lost. Odia picked up an arrow on the ground and shot it in the direction of the old witch. I was lost, but I found the way again. Broken into pieces. Maureen found that the arm of the undead skeleton was kicked away, but the finger bones were still holding him tightly. He raised his wand to cut the finger bones, and then struggled to pull his feet out. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Odia glanced at the chaotic scene and shouted at Maureen, "Get on my back." What did you say just now? Maureen didn't hear clearly. Get on my back. Odia repeated. Are you sure? Maureen heard it clearly this time, but he thought he had misheard. Hurry up. It's too dangerous here, I have to protect your safety. Odia hugged Maureen's waist and threw Maureen onto his back. Maureen quickly grabbed Odia's shoulders, straddled his legs on Odia's horse, and then grabbed the belt of the quiver behind Odia to stabilize his body. But I thought you didn't like someone riding. Maureen asked hesitantly. Yesterday when Hagrid asked Odia to pull the sled, Odia firmly opposed it, because he thought that only mules and dogs would do such a lowly thing as pulling a sled. He didn't expect that Odia would take the initiative to let Maureen ride on his horse today, which surprised him. I can't care so much. Lower your head. The arrows in the quiver behind Odia had long been used up. He held an axe in his hand and chopped off the head of a dead skeleton that rushed in front of him. At the same time, he raised his hind hoof and kicked a big hole in the chest of another dead skeleton. Chapter 384 Arnold's Bad Idea. You can use arrows. Maureen used a flying spell to call an arrow stuck on the ground, and then stuffed it into the quiver behind Odia, and whispered copy into groups to fill the quiver. Very good, that old guy is too powerful, I will take you to a safe place. Odia had already turned around and was ready to run down the hillside. Maureen hurriedly shouted, wait a minute, I already know how to deal with that old witch. Take me to find her. Odia's hoof crossed a grave pit and kicked back an undead skeleton that was about to crawl out of the coffin. He shook his head and said, no, this is too dangerous. Ronan originally wanted you to see through the old witch's divination magic, but she didn't use those divination techniques. It's dangerous for you to go there now. There were several creaking sounds from the bushes in front, and then another undead skeleton jumped out and pounced on Maureen from the side. Wind and thunder. Maureen shouted, and a bolt of lightning swooshed and hit the chest of the undead skeleton, but it did not make the undead skeleton fall down, and the undead skeleton continued to rush over. Maureen turned his wand, and the lightning went along the body of the undead skeleton and drilled into its eye sockets. Then, when the undead skeleton was halfway through, it suddenly stopped in the air, and then fell into the grass, turning into a pile of chaotic bones. This. Odia was surprised. Lightning magic. Yes, you have to hit their eye sockets. Someone told me just now. Maureen raised his hand and stretched out his wand to defeat another undead skeleton. Someone told you? Who? Hagrid. Odia asked. It's not Hagrid. Don't worry about it for now. Take me to the old witch quickly. I can deal with him. Maureen shouted. But it's very dangerous. Odia tilted his head to the left and dodged a red spell shot by the old witch. The red spell hid another centaur not far away. The centaur cried out in pain and fell into the bushes and disappeared. Hurry up. Otherwise, we will all be in trouble. Maureen urged. At this time, there were less than 10 centaurs still fighting in the cemetery. Several centaurs were hit by the old witch's spell and their lives and deaths were unknown. The remaining centaurs were stopped by the undead skeletons. The old witch had retreated to the side of the wooden house. The centaur's bows and arrows were very fast, but her spells were not slow either. However, at this time, she was more focused on protecting the wooden house and preventing the arrows from shooting into it. Odia gritted his teeth and said, okay, if you have a way. He had turned a corner and dodged beside a crooked tree. then kicked away a dead skeleton that jumped down from the treetop and rushed to the wooden house from the other side. Maureen held Odia tightly. Odia had to dodge the witch's spell from time to time. Maureen had to be very careful not to be thrown out by him. He had never ridden a horse before, but it felt pretty good. When Odia passed by a centaur who was entangled by skeletons, Maureen quickly fired a lightning spell at the undead skeleton again, and Odia kicked another undead skeleton out at the same time. "You have to be careful," Odia shouted. Maureen rode Odia and fired lightning spells at the undead skeletons along the way from time to time. He had knocked down more than 10 undead skeletons, and the old witch on the side also found something wrong. She originally used magic to control these undead skeletons. Even if the undead skeletons were kicked to pieces by the horse's hooves, they would reassemble. But after Maureen joined the battlefield again, she found that there were fewer and fewer undead skeletons blocking the centaur. "I thought I had you taken care of." The old witch smashed an arrow shot by Odia with her magic wand. Her sinister eyes had already spotted Maureen on Odia's back. "You ugly bastard, do you really think you are invincible?" Maureen shouted. He fired a stun spell at the old witch, but the old witch dodged it. "What if you break free? You still have to surrender again." The old witch easily dispelled Maureen's spell. Maureen was a little unsure. Although Arnok had just told him how to deal with the old witch, Arnok's bad idea was not reliable no matter how he thought about it. However, he still plucked up the courage to stick his head out from Odia's back. "You will understand. You ugly bastard, do you know what you look like?" Maureen raised his wand and cast a spell into the air, sunlight scorching. A dazzling sunlight turned into a ball of light and flew high into the sky, illuminating the entire hillside. The old witch ignored the sunlight above her head. She looked even more eerie and strange under the sunlight. "What? You want to deal with me with sunlight magic? Is this what you came up with?" Those undead skeletons were not afraid of sunlight at all. They were still scratching and biting those centaurs. Except for the lightning magic that could restrain them, sunlight was not a problem at all. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. "No, I just want you to see what you look like." "Oh, you must not have looked in the mirror for a long time, right?" Maureen shouted and waved his magic wand, making the weeds on the ground float up. These weeds soon entangled with each other, forming a pile of grass floating in the air. Then Maureen quickly shouted, "Change in an instant." These grasses were turned into mirrors as tall as a person by Maureen. All the mirrors flew to the old witch and surrounded her. "Mirror? Why do you turn them into mirrors?" Odia thought this idea was a bit absurd. The old witch was so powerful, how could she be afraid of something like a mirror? "I don't know." Maureen himself had no idea. This was the method that Arnok told him. When he heard Arnok ask him to look in the mirror for the old witch, Maureen thought it was a bad idea. The old witch could easily deal with the swift arrows of the centaurs, so how could she be afraid of the mirror? But now Maureen could only believe Arnok's bad idea once. However, no one expected that the moment the mirror fell, the old witch's face, which was originally like mud, suddenly changed. She screamed in fear, her voice was shrill and sharp, as if she was scratching her heart. She desperately covered her face and shouted angrily, "No. No. I can't look like this. This is not me. This is not me. You are too despicable. Take it away. Take it away. Smash it to pieces." The old witch cast a crushing spell at the mirror. She seemed to be very afraid of seeing herself in the mirror. The wrinkles on her face looked like layers of cow dung, she had no teeth, her hair was about to fall out, and she was extremely ugly. It actually works. All the centaurs were stunned, thinking that this was too weird. The old witch who was unstoppable just now was so scared when she saw her own mirror. Not to mention the centaurs, even Maureen was deeply surprised. You know, when Arnok said that he would use the mirror to deal with the old witch, he suspected that Arnok was going to tease him again. Who would be afraid of the mirror? But Maureen knew that Arnold would never joke about such things, so he just tried it casually. Unexpectedly, it actually worked. This made Maureen have to admire Arnold's ability. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 385, Advancing in the Grave. The mirror was shattered by the old witch, but Maureen was quick-witted and quickly conjured up several more mirrors. When one mirror was shattered, the grass on the ground immediately rolled up and reassembled into a mirror, which shone again for the old witch. The old witch screamed miserably. She had covered her eyes, as if she was frightened by her ugly appearance. She yelled madly, "Don't shine on me! This is not me! This is not me! I will kill you! I will kill you!" Her wand kept shooting spells forward, trying to shatter the mirrors, but she was afraid of seeing her appearance and had closed her eyes. The spells did not hit the mirrors at all. Her spell hit the sunlight spell in the sky, but not long after the sunlight went out, Maureen had been prepared and shot at a lot of sunlight from all directions. As long as there was light and mirrors, she could deal with the old witch. Yes, that's what you look like. You finally know that you look too disgusting to come out and scare people. Maureen controlled the mirror to dodge the old witch's random spells. Several mirrors were broken, but he repaired them again. Taking advantage of this gap, he cast several lightning magic spells on the skeleton next to him. "Just wait. I must kill you." The old witch desperately tore her face, and the piles of wrinkles on her face were torn off by her light dead skin. She roared angrily, and her whole body shrank under the light of the mirror, and soon became a skin and bones. If it weren't for the dark brown layer of dry human skin still hanging on her body, I'm afraid it would be similar to the undead skeleton she controlled. Maureen was shocked. He originally thought that the old witch just couldn't stand her ugly appearance, so she almost went crazy. Unexpectedly, the mirror actually exposed the old witch's true form. At this time, the old witch's body seemed to be dehydrated, with dry dead skin piled up on her body, and all her hair fell out, which was even more terrifying than the wrinkled appearance just now. "I will kill you. I will kill you." The old witch's body was shaking with anger. She still covered her eyes, and then madly shot spells in all directions. Some spells even smashed the undead skeleton she summoned. Maureen's mirror was also constantly broken, and he quickly reassembled it. Odeya had no choice but to take him back behind a tree to avoid the old witch's crazy spells. The old witch became completely crazy. Ronan and Odeya shot arrows at the old witch, but they were all shattered by the old witch's spells. "You seem to have angered her," Odeya said in a deep voice. "That doesn't matter. At least we have the chance to deal with her." Maureen jumped off Odeya's horse. He ducked his head in the bushes to avoid a purple spell, then pointed his wand at the old witch and shouted, "Stupefy." His stupefying spell was shattered by the old witch not long after it was fired. But he ran to the side and aimed at the old witch again from another angle and cast a stupefying spell on her. This time the stupefying spell hit the old witch's foot. The old witch screamed in pain, staggered, and fell to the ground. But Maureen's stupefying spell did not knock the old witch unconscious. She got up angrily, closed her eyes, and fired a series of spells at Maureen based on her senses. "Be careful." If Odie hadn't rushed over in time to grab Maureen, I'm afraid these spells would have hit him directly, and the consequences would have been disastrous. Don't take risks. Although she can't see, her ears are still there, and her senses are too sharp. Odie whispered. "Odeya, go help the other centaurs first, I'll stop Lucas. That old witch is afraid of mirrors. You guys find a way to shine a light on her." Maureen jumped down from Odeya's hand, then conjured up several mirrors and threw them at Odeya's feet, then ran away. "Wait. Damn it." Odeya wanted to stop Maureen, but he was too tall and not as flexible as Maureen. Just as he was about to stop Maureen, the old witch's spell had already shot at him, so he could only dodge to the side. At this time, Maureen had already run far away. Maureen went around the side and went behind the old witch. This time he did not use magic to attack the old witch, for fear that the spell would not hit the old witch and the old witch would find his tracks again. He had to rush into the wooden house as soon as possible to stop Lucas from getting the black cube. But suddenly a dead skeleton jumped out from his side and rushed towards him. He could only fire a lightning magic at the dead skeleton to get rid of it. But this lightning magic also exposed his position again, and the old witch once again fired a spell at him based on her feeling. He was prepared this time, and immediately pounced under a crooked tree next to him. The crooked tree was instantly cut off by the old witch's spell. Maureen could only cast an armor spell to block the fallen tree. The old witch continued to fire spells at him. Maureen saw a grave pit next to him, so he had no choice but to jump into the grave and step back into the coffin to avoid the old witch's spell. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. He really didn't like standing in the coffin. The smell of the dead here was too bad. He could only cover his nose, tiptoe on the edge of the coffin, stick half of his head out, and look at the old witch's position through the weeds. But the grass was too deep, blocking his sight. He first cast a cutting spell, shooting a crack in the weeds in front of him, and barely saw the position of the old witch. But it was too far away, and he couldn't cast a spell on the old witch. If he ran forward, he would probably be stopped by the undead skeletons, and then he would be discovered by the old witch again. He thought about it and set his sights on the wooden house not far away. At this time, the wooden house was already shaky, and he didn't know whether Lucas had found the black cube. A powerful thing like the black cube shouldn't be placed in any box in the wooden house casually, right? No, I have to force Lucas out. Maureen climbed out of the grave again and ran forward for a distance. The old witch found him again based on the undead skeletons, and he jumped into another grave. The wooden house could be seen in this grave, and it was very close to the wooden house. He shouted without hesitation, "The flames are raging." A flame quickly rushed out, extending like a bursting fire line, and soon led to the wooden house, setting the originally dilapidated wooden house on fire. The fire engulfed the cabin, and the old witch roared angrily. She just opened her eyes to put out the flames, but Maureen quickly waved a mirror in front of her. She screamed and covered her eyes again, then cast a spell at Maureen. Maureen quickly lowered his head and got into the grave. Chapter 386 Smoke Bomb. There were 2 dead skeletons lying in the coffins in the grave pit. After being electrocuted by Maureen, these skeletons had returned to their original forms. Maureen was not sure whether these skeletons were muggles or wizards before, but at this time the bones of the 2 skeletons were mixed together in a mess, and it was unknown which bone fell from whose body. Maureen had no time to care about these things. It was not a good experience to stay in a coffin with 2 skeletons. "May you rest in peace," Maureen muttered, intending to go and see the burning of the wooden house. He stepped on the head of a skeleton, tiptoed, and stuck his head out of the edge of the grave pit. He had no reason to be polite to these skeletons. You know, he was chased by these dead skeletons just now and almost lost his life. It was unlikely that he would respect them. The flames soon swept the whole cabin, but the flames had almost burned the cabin, and Lucas still didn't come out from inside. There seemed to be no Lucas in the fire scene, and Lucas didn't cast any water magic to put out the flames. This made Maureen feel a little strange. Wasn't Lucas in the cabin? But at this moment, the whole burning cabin debris suddenly exploded, and many woods flew everywhere with flames. A water spell put out the flames at once, and then Maureen saw Lucas jumping out of the floor of the cabin. Maureen immediately understood that the black cube might be hidden in the secret basement of the dilapidated cabin. "What are you doing?" Lucas saw the old witch casting spells all around, and one of the spells almost hit him. He shouted angrily, "I have got the black cube, hurry up. Get rid of these mirrors, I can't see any mirrors. Hurry up." The old witch screamed in a cold and shrill voice. "What, mirror? What are you talking about?" Lucas didn't seem to understand why the old witch was afraid of mirrors. He waved his wand again to block the arrows shot by Ronan and Odia. "Hurry up. Mirror. Mirror. Destroy them." The old witch screamed at Lucas sharply. "It's crazy." Lucas reacted and immediately stretched out his wand to shoot several black spells, turning the mirrors that Maureen had conjured into black smoke, and then continued to deal with the arrows shot by the centaurs. At this time, with the help of the faint light, Maureen just caught a glimpse of what was in Lucas' left hand. It was a dark box. It was a black magic cube. Die? While Lucas was dealing with his mirror, Maureen immediately shot a stun spell at Lucas from the side. The stun spell rushed past through a patch of weeds, and shot at Lucas. As long as Lucas was dealt with first, it would be much easier to use the mirror to deal with the old witch. But his stunning spell missed Lucas, but hit the black box in Lucas's hand. Buzz! With a dull sound, the black box flew out and disappeared into the bushes in the dark. Damn it! Where's the black cube? Who is it? Lucas didn't have the same strong reaction ability as the old witch, and he was busy dealing with the sharp arrows of the centaurs, so he didn't expect that there was another Maureen in the grave not far away, looking around. Just a little bit. Maureen annoyed. His aim in the stunning spell from this position was very poor. If he was closer, he would be able to knock Lucas unconscious. He raised his wand again and aimed at Lucas, firing a disarming spell at Lucas, trying to disarm Lucas' wand, but Lucas reacted this time and waved his wand to block Maureen's disarming spell. "Little bastard, so you were hiding there." Lucas fired a flame spell at Maureen with a ferocious look on his face. The flames immediately rolled up and rushed towards Maureen, burning the weeds in front of Maureen. The spring is flowing. Maureen quickly cast a water spell to put out the fire, but Lucas's magic ability was better than his, and his water spell couldn't extinguish the flames. He tried to use the flame transformation spell again, but it didn't work either. Lucas's magic level was far above his. Maureen quickly climbed out of the grave pit, and then cut a stone spell on the ground to surround the flames and prevent them from spreading. Lucas roared angrily and had no time to care about Maureen. He lowered his head to look for the black cube that fell in the grass. The black cube was the most important to him. The black cube is flying, Lucas shouted. But nothing happened in the darkness. It was impossible for a simple flying spell to summon the black cube. This kind of thing had powerful magic protection. The latest novel is first published on 69shushu.com. Lucas groped into the weeds. Maureen's stun spell had just bounced the black cube into the dense weeds. It was not an easy task to find a box in the weeds in the dark. The old witch had opened her eyes. After Lucas broke the mirrors, her skinny body slowly swelled up again, as if it was inflated. Although her skin was still dry, it was much better than the original horrifying mummy appearance. However, the wrinkles on her face that had been removed began to grow again, and as Arnok said, they accumulated on her face like cow dung. The centaur's attacks never stopped. The old witch was dealing with the centaur's arrows while screaming at Lucas, "Where's the black cube? I'm looking for it!" Lucas yelled. He waved his wand and turned all the weeds in front of him into black smoke. Then he saw the black cube stuck in the cracks of the rocks 10 meters away. "I found it!" Lucas ran towards the black cube. Lucas was about to run to the black cube. The old witch also cast a large armor spell to block the centaur's arrows temporarily, and then ran after Lucas. But at this time, Maureen had already taken out a dark smoke bomb from James from his pocket and cast a projection spell on the smoke bomb. The smoke bomb flew towards Lucas and the old witch. When the old witch heard something coming, she habitually waved her wand and smashed the thing without hesitation. Bang! The black smoke bomb exploded, and a cloud of black smoke immediately rolled out, enveloping the old witch and Lucas. "Damn it! This damn smoke bomb!" Lucas shouted angrily, shouting out the spell, "Disappear." However, the Weasley family's product quality assurance is extremely effective. Their smoke bombs are not in vain. The ordinary elimination spell cast by Lucas cannot eliminate the smoke produced by the smoke bomb. Not to mention that the black smoke bomb that Maureen got was a brand new product that was recently launched after a series of upgrades. Once it exploded, it was enough to turn the place covered by the smoke bomb into a black sky, and no relatives or animals could be recognized. Even in the hot sun, it was pitch dark. Lucas tried several spells but failed to successfully eliminate the smoke. Maureen took the opportunity to blindly launch several stunning spells into the smoke, and then heard Lucas screaming in pain and falling to the ground. Chapter 387 Momo, "Stupid! You bastard, you're looking for death?" the old witch screamed. Although she couldn't see where Maureen was, she immediately fired countless curses from the smoke to fight back. These curses flew around aimlessly, and it was impossible to see who the target was. Several curses also flew towards Maureen. Maureen could only dodge to the side, but he slipped and fell into a grave again. He hit a skeleton, and the skulls had bounced up, bounced on the wall, and fell on his chest again. The empty eye sockets looked straight at him. "I hate this feeling." Maureen quickly swept the skull away with his wand, and touched his arms and knees in pain. He had scratched his skin when he fell just now, and now he was bleeding. He used the healing spell to stop the bleeding. No, even if there are smoke bombs, it's useless. The old witch is firing spells like this, and I can't rush in to grab the black cube at all. Maureen panted and stood up again. He was a little anxious now, thinking about the plan quickly in his mind, and poking his head out to see the place covered by the smoke bomb, but the spell cast by the old witch was too dense, and he couldn't get close. Maureen also understood one thing. Although the smoke bomb was powerful, with the strength of the old witch, it would definitely not trap them for long, and the old witch would always break it. He had to find a way to get the black magic cube quickly. Just when he was at a loss, a white shadow suddenly jumped down from the edge of the grave. Maureen was slightly stunned. He realized that he was only concerned with fighting the old witch, but forgot that there was a Doi beside him. Doi had slipped away at some point, and came back panting with a black magic cube that was bigger than it. "Wow! My god! Doi, you are not affected by the smoke bomb." Maureen was so surprised that his jaw almost dropped. Doi threw the black cube to Maureen, then stood on the black cube with her little feet, raised her head proudly, put her little paws on her waist, and said, "Doi, great. Yes, yes, Doi is great." Maureen was overjoyed and wanted to grab Doi and kiss her. Unexpectedly, at the critical moment, Doi took advantage of the chaos to steal the black cube back. You know, Doi is a mysterious invisible beast. No one except Maureen and the Arnag couple discovered its existence. When it ran over to grab the black cube, it is estimated that even the old witch and Lucas did not expect that there would be a small beast that would fish in troubled waters in the smoke bomb. "Momo, stupid." Doi suddenly spoke again in a proud manner. "Hey? What did you say?" Maureen was shocked. What was going on? "Momo, stupid, Doi, great." Doi spoke again. This time Maureen heard Doi's words clearly. He was actually despised by Doi. Okay. Very good, you have learned a new word. Maureen was a little amused. Ever since Doi could say bang bang da, Maureen had been teaching it to speak, but the little guy refused to learn. Now he suddenly said, "Momo, stupid?" Maureen didn't know what to say. "Actually, I'm not stupid, Doi. It's rude to say that." Maureen rubbed Doi's head roughly. He was despised by a little guy who was still babbling. He felt helpless. Doi jumped onto Maureen's shoulder proudly. Maureen quickly stuffed the black cube into his pocket and climbed out of the grave. At this time, the old witch had already dissolved the troublesome smoke, and Lucas also struggled to get up from the ground. Maureen's coma spell didn't seem to knock him out completely. "Where's the black cube? Where did the black cube go?" Lucas searched around angrily. The old witch also roared, because the centaurs had picked up their bows and arrows and shot at her. Then there were many shouts and the sound of police sirens coming from the hill not far away. The flashlight was shining in this direction. Obviously, the battle in this place had attracted the attention of the Muggles. "Damn it, the Muggles are coming, let's go," the old witch growled. "The black cube is lost. We can't leave without finding the black cube." Lucas didn't plan to leave just like that. He seemed very unwilling. "If we attract the attention of the Muggles, the Ministry of Magic will come soon. Let's go," the old witch shouted. "I don't want to show up in front of the Ministry of Magic." Lucas angrily fired a killing curse at the centaurs behind him, but missed and smashed a tombstone into pieces. He roared unwillingly and ran away with the old witch. "Don't even think about running. Give us back our things." Ronan shouted and chased after them. The remaining dead skeletons were still entangled with the centaurs. Ronan was already running very fast, but Lucas and the old witch fired several more curses, and he could only dodge. When he chased them again, Lucas and the old witch had already left the anti-apparition magic set by the centaurs and disappeared into the air. Ronan let out a low roar of anger. "I can't catch up. They are too cautious." Maureen rushed over and used lightning to break the remaining dead skeletons into pieces. "Maureen, thank God, you are still here." Hagrid struggled to get up. His forehead was still bleeding, and his clothes were tattered, and some places were stained with weeds. "It's crazy. I told you that I shouldn't bring you here. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Professor," Maureen said. At this time, a dazzling golden halo suddenly lit up next to a tree in the cemetery. Fizzarin had reopened the portal with a bonfire. "What's going on?" Fizzarin and others asked on the other side with bows and arrows. The latest novel is first published on 69shu.com. "Some of our tribesmen are injured. Come and help," Odia shouted. Soon, 7 or 8 centaurs emerged from the fire circle. Everyone rushed to help check on the injured centaurs. Several centaurs were hit by the witch's curse. Their bodies were covered in blood and claw marks left by the dead skeletons. It was very miserable. The Muggle police in the distance seemed to have rushed over here, but the cemetery was not easy to walk through and the car could not drive over. They walked over here with flashlights and shouted something. "Go. We can't let the Muggles discover our existence," Ronan shouted. Maureen quickly used his wand to cast a smoke spell on the Muggles in the distance. The white smoke rushed down the hillside, hoping to stop them for a while. Ronan and his companions quickly helped the injured tribesmen up, passed through the portal of the bonfire, and left the cemetery. "Molan, are you okay?" As soon as Molan returned to the centaur's territory, and ran over with a cry, looking at Molan in panic. "Are you injured?" "Oh, it's okay, just a scratch." Molan only then noticed that there were wounds on many parts of his body. To be honest, he didn't notice the pain in the chaotic situation just now. Now that Nran reminded him, He suddenly felt that the bones in his body were about to fall apart like those undead skeletons. Bear it for a while. Unran touched the wound on Molin's knee with her hand worriedly, and the wound gradually healed under her touch. Unran, go and see the centaurs first. These wounds are not serious, but the centaurs are serious. Some of the centaurs have been cursed and may be in danger of death. They need you. Molin hurriedly urged. Okay, then be careful, I'll check you later. Unran also saw many centaurs lying on the ground motionless. She was very anxious and hurried over to help check. Chapter 388 Severely Injured. The injuries suffered by the centaurs this time were extremely serious. 7 or 8 centaurs were unconscious. The wounds on their bodies were bleeding green blood, which was shocking. Many centaurs also groaned in pain. The most seriously injured centaur had his foot blown off by the old witch's curse. He should be disabled for life. Fizarin was helping him treat the wound and shook his head solemnly. I'm afraid I can only rely on prosthetic limbs in the future. I'm sorry, Jerry, this is a wound caused by the black magic cube. You can't use herbs to make the broken limb grow back. Whether it is a wizard or a centaur, if the finger or foot is broken, if it is cut off by a knife, or cut off by ordinary magic, there is a way to regenerate the broken limb. But if the wound is caused by very powerful black magic, it can't grow back easily. Maureen felt a little heavy. The price paid by the centaurs this time was too high. Although no centaurs lost their lives, the entire centaur tribe was shrouded in a shadow. Not only did they fail to take back the black magic cube that Lucas had guarded for generations, but some of their tribesmen were also severely injured. Here you go. Ronan was in a very depressed mood. He slowly walked towards Maureen and handed Maureen a pocket kerosene lamp with a new fire. He knew that Maureen's kerosene lamp had just broken, so he gave him a new one. Are you okay? Ronan's voice was a little sad. I'm fine. Maureen took the kerosene lamp, put it in his pocket, shook his head, looked at the other centaurs again, and asked, are the other centaurs okay? 3 of them may have a chronic disease. We can treat the injuries of the other tribesmen. Ronan sighed. The centaurs are also good at healing magic. They are familiar with various plants and herbs, and have their own opinions on the spells of healing wizards. Because the old witch had to deal with the siege of the centaurs, the spells she fired were very fast, and she couldn't cast a powerful evil spell. This saved the lives of several centaurs. I'm sorry to hear this news. Maureen had no choice. He himself was not a match for the old witch and Lucas, and it was impossible for him to help much. It's none of your business. Ronan shook his head, his voice somewhat self-blaming. It's my fault. I was so focused on taking back the black cube and removing the divination curse that I ignored the strength of my opponent. Yes, it's all your fault. I told you not to be so reckless, but you didn't listen. Hagrid strode over beside him, very annoyed. I had long opposed letting Maureen go with him. Fortunately, Maureen is fine. You centaurs always like to go your own way. The old witch should be dealt with by the Ministry of Magic. Sorry, Hagrid, I'm a burden to you. Ronan said. Hagrid had a scratch on his face and his hand was still blue, but fortunately he was special. Ordinary spells didn't work on him. He had applied the herbs given by Fizarin, and the swelling seemed to have subsided a lot. I'm fine. Hagrid said in a rough voice, forget about it. I have to take Maureen and Anrin back to the castle now. I was too reckless at night. I shouldn't have been so reckless. It's not that we didn't gain anything at night. Maureen said hesitantly. What have we gained? What else do we know besides how powerful those 2 dark wizards are? This is really crazy. Hagrid muttered. Maureen originally wanted to take out the black cube, but he thought of Arnok's warning. Arnok said that the black cube was an ancient magic item. Now many people don't know what it is. If it is opened accidentally, it is likely to cause a lot of trouble. That day, the monster came out of the black cube in the Dumbledore Cup, leaving many people at a loss. Although there are many professors in the school, there may be a way, but for the sake of caution, he still believes in Arnok. No, Professor. Maureen did not tell Hagrid about getting the black cube. Unran had already run over there. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and said, no, I can't help much. It's okay. You have helped a lot. Fazellen came over and said solemnly. He looked at the campfire again and said with a depressed mood, if we can't get the magic cube back, then we will have to continue to endure the punishment of the divination curse in the future. Maureen remembered what Arnok said, slapped his head and said, oh, there is another way. I know how to remove the divination curse of you centaurs. I'm afraid there is no other way except to find the black magic cube. Ronan shook his head. Not necessarily, and ran. Come with me. Maureen waved at Ran and walked towards the centaur's campfire. What's wrong? Can we do it? And Ran asked in confusion. Yes, we can. Maureen pointed to the jumping golden flames and repeated the method that Arnok taught him. Ronan and Fazellen also came over and looked at each other after hearing Maureen's words. It shouldn't be a problem if I put my hand in the fire. And Ran asked. Oh, do you have a way to prevent being burned by the bonfire? Maureen asked Ronan. Ronan hesitated for a moment. If we put the non-grass in first and let it burn, the bonfire won't burn us, but I'm not sure if this method will work. It should work. Maureen said seriously, if the power of the divination curse is in the bonfire, then Inran can completely guide it out and put it all into my body. Anyway, I'm skinnier. Oh, I'm special. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. Okay, then I'll try it first. Inran was very bold and didn't object. Ronan and Fezzerin were not sure if this method would work. They thought about it and finally agreed to let Maureen and Inran try it. In the past few months since the Black Cube was lost, one of the tribesmen suffered great pain every night when Venus entered orbit. This severe punishment made their centaurs very vulnerable. If the method that Maureen said could work, then it would be the best. Well, if you can help, then try it, but if not, we have to go back to the castle. It would be best if it succeeds, so you don't have to come at night in the future. Hagrid sat on a big rock on the side. He was exhausted at night, and there were still some scratches from the undead skeletons on his body. Although the centaurs used special herbs to help him eliminate the wounds, he didn't want to get involved in this matter again. Ronan threw 2 white non-grass leaves into the bonfire. Maureen and Anran squatted beside the bonfire. The golden flames looked very pleasant, just like the sun, making people feel very warm. Anran held Maureen's hand, and then carefully reached the other hand to the bonfire. She first touched the tip of the flame, and quickly retracted it. Finding that the flame did not burn her hand, she carefully put her hand in completely. When Inran's hand reached the center of the bonfire, a few sparks suddenly appeared from the golden bonfire. These sparks swirled in the air like fireflies, and then these erratic sparks suddenly formed the shape of Inran. Wow, so magical. Inran couldn't help but look at herself above the bonfire. Although she was only the size of a palm, she found it very interesting. Last time when Hagrid's beard was burned, the sparks also formed a small Hagrid. When Maureen inadvertently set his eyes on this palm-sized Inran, he suddenly stared at her, and then opened his mouth in disbelief. Chapter 389, Inran's Mark. What's wrong? Inran felt that something was wrong with Maureen, so he asked in confusion. Maureen looked at Inran in front of him, and then looked at the little Inran on the bonfire, and was very surprised. He actually saw a mark in the eyes of the little Inran on the bonfire. A triangle with small circles floating on the 3 sides. This mark was exactly one of the 12 marks that Maureen saw on the Dumbledore cup, and Inran's mark was also the mark of the black magic cube guarded by the centaurs, and the mark on the forehead of the smoke monster who took Inran away in the Forbidden Forest. Look at your eyes in the flames. Maureen pointed at the little Inran on the bonfire and said, Huh? What a strange pattern. Inran also discovered the pattern in the eyes above. She blinked her innocent eyes and asked, Do I have this pattern in my eyes too? Maureen took a close look at Inran's eyes. Inran's eyes reflected the bonfire, with a faint golden color, but did not show the pattern. No, your eyes don't have it, but this bonfire has it. Maureen remembered something and turned to ask Ronan and Fezzelin, Do you two know what the pattern of Inran means? Ronan and Fezzelin's expressions did not change at all. They just looked at the bonfire solemnly and did not speak. You knew it a long time ago. Maureen had guessed it by looking at the expressions of Ronan and Fezzelin. That's why we invited Inran. She is very special. Ronan looked up at the sky and said faintly, Arcturus and Neptune are shining on each other. Hey, I don't care about Arcturus and Neptune. Don't always make excuses to get away with it. Maureen was very impatient with the centaur's tricks. When they didn't want to tell a secret, they would talk about the stars in the sky. What do you want to know? Ronan asked. What does this pattern mean? Maureen remembered that Sweet also had a pattern in his eyes, but Sweet never dared to walk in the sun because his eyes would glow when exposed to the sun, which made him very introverted. And Ran is not as bad as Sweet yet, so Maureen must ensure that Ran's eyes will not glow in the sun. A special identity, that's all I can say. Ronan shook his head. We are helping you to remove the divination curse, and you are still hiding it from us. This is not a cooperative attitude. Maureen was a little annoyed. If you know some truth, it's better to tell it, for Ayn Rand's sake. What truth? Hagrid asked beside him. Ayn Rand didn't quite understand. Ronan stopped talking, but Fizzarin on the side said, "It's not that we don't say it, but the truth is lost in time." What does this mean? Maureen looked at Fizzarin, who was easier to talk to than Ronan. It's been too long, and many things have not been passed down, and the truth about Ayn Rand has been lost, but we can be sure that Ayn Rand has a special relationship with this black magic cube, or that Ayn Rand's ancestors have some connection with our centaur's ancestors. Fizzarin said. Maureen and Ayn Rand looked at each other, and Ayn Rand's eyes were full of curiosity. She didn't know what impact this incident would have on her. But if Ayn Rand is not careful, her eyes will. Maureen hesitated. Ayn Rand and Sweet were obviously the same kind of people, and it was not clear what this meant. He changed his words. People will notice that something is wrong with her. If you know this, you should know that some things are very unfavorable to Ayn Rand. Fezalin said, if you are worried about her eyes, you don't need to worry about this. Some of her special magical abilities have not yet been revealed. Even if there is this problem in the future, we can use fire to cover her eyes. Maureen was surprised and said, can you use fire to cover your eyes? Yes, the fire of us centaurs is very special. Fezalin looked at Maureen. Just like helping you guide the way and protecting you from getting lost, we will also help protect Ayn Rand. Maureen pondered for a moment. He said, then can you help me get another kerosene lamp? You already have one. Fezalin said. I think I need a second one. This shouldn't be a difficult task, right? Maureen was going to take the fire back to help Sweet. He remembered what Sweet had said a few days ago. Sweet had said that his eyes were protected by a magic of his mother before. After his mother died, he could no longer use that magic to disguise. If the magic of the centaurs can help cover up, then one should be brought to Sweet. Okay. Fizzarin did not object. What's the use of this, Maureen? Ayn Rand asked curiously. It's useful, believe me. Maureen nodded, and then said, let's get down to business. We need to lift the centaur's divination curse. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. You're right. Ayn Rand began to calm down and carefully feel the divination curse and the bonfire. Soon, she showed a hint of surprise, and then her face became solemn again, and she began to slowly guide the divination curse into Maureen's body. The powerful divination curse, which was specially used to punish the centaurs and bring them pain, was like a stone sinking into the sea after entering Maureen's body. Nothing happened. About 10 minutes later, Ayn Rand breathed a sigh of relief and pulled his hand back from the bonfire. The little Ayn Rand made up of sparks on the bonfire slowly dissipated. Okay, I feel that the power of the curse and the bonfire has disappeared. Ayn Rand stood up from the ground happily. Is this all right? Hagrid asked doubtfully. It should be. The power in the bonfire has disappeared in Maureen's body. Ayn Rand nodded. That's the best. I can't let you two run to the Forbidden Forest every night. It's really unsafe. Well, we should go back. Hagrid stood up. I have to tell the headmaster about this tomorrow. Yes, I will. Hagrid found Ronan and Fizzarin looking at him. Obviously, the centaurs didn't want other wizards except Hagrid to know about this, but Hagrid insisted, there is no room for negotiation on this matter. The Muggles have seen it. Maybe they also saw your appearance. I'm so big that I'm too easy to recognize. You'll see that the Ministry of Magic will find out about me soon. I can't deal with those people in the Ministry of Magic. Ronan didn't say anything else. They also knew that what happened at night had alarmed the Muggles. It was estimated that people from the Ministry of Magic would come to find them tomorrow. This matter could not be avoided. Then I will take you back myself. Fizzarin called Odea. Odea was a stronger warrior among the centaurs. He was not seriously injured that night. When he saw Maureen was about to get a sled, he suddenly said, no need. Get on my back and I'll take you out. Ayn Rand and Hagrid were both a little surprised. They thought they had heard wrongly. The centaurs did not allow wizards to ride on their backs. When the other centaurs heard what Odea said, they turned around and looked at him. Odea pursed his lips and looked at Maureen. There was a strange expression on his angular face. They are different from other wizards. I just want to protect them. We understand. This is not a shame, Odea. Fizzarin nodded. The other centaurs seemed to respect Odea's choice. No one laughed at Odea for being a low-class mule. Chapter 390 Sunshine. Odea, How did you suddenly figure it out? Hagrid couldn't help asking as he ran through the woods to catch up with Odea. Maureen and Anrin were sitting on Odea's back, holding onto his shoulder straps tightly. He was running very fast, and Maureen and Anrin had to hold on to Odea tightly to prevent him from being thrown out. It is our responsibility as centaurs to protect the fowls. Odea replied vaguely. He seemed unwilling to say more about this matter, and just ran with his head down. It would have been nice if you had thought of this earlier. Hagrid shouted. They had already reached the edge of the Forbidden Forest, and Odea squatted down slightly so that Anrin and Maureen could jump off his back. Thank you, Odea. Anrin said happily. I've never ridden before. I mean, this is a magical experience. No, we should thank you. Odea looked at Anrin with a complicated tone, then looked at Maureen, and said to Maureen, you just saved a lot of our people with your lightning magic. You are very brave. It's okay, I just have someone to help me. Maureen said embarrassedly. If Arnott hadn't told him that using lightning magic to hide the eyes of the undead skeleton could solve this black magic, he wouldn't have been able to deal with it, let alone the old witch. Anyway, you two have to be careful, Maureen. If your fire goes out, you must let Hagrid come to me. I will bring it to you. You two don't come to the Forbidden Forest alone. Odea warned. We will. Maureen found that Odea's attitude towards him had changed a lot. It seems that Odea is not such a stubborn centaur. You know, when Odea first saw Maureen, he was saying all kinds of nonsense that he couldn't see Maureen. Then goodbye, Odea. If you have any problems when Venus enters orbit tomorrow night, come to me, but I hope this is the last time Maureen and Anrin enter the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid and Odea waved, and then took Maureen and Anrin to the castle. I'm exhausted tonight. I didn't expect so many troubles to happen. Hagrid said as he walked in the snow. His big feet left a row of big footprints in the snow. Yet, I didn't expect it to be so dangerous. Maureen admitted. He originally thought that he was just helping the centaurs to relieve the pain caused by the curse. Who could have thought that this series of things would happen? But at least he got a black magic cube, and this black magic cube was now wrapped in Arnock's parchment and stuffed into his pocket where he cast the Traceless extension spell. After Maureen sent Anrin to Ravenclaw's tower, he said goodnight and returned to the dormitory. Hugo was playing with Toby, testing a big nose candy they bought from James and Albus. Hugo's nose turned into a pig's nose and Toby's nose turned into a mouse's nose. Hey, Maureen, you're back? How is it going? Hugo threw a candy to Maureen. I'm exhausted. Maureen slumped on the bed. He originally wanted to go and see the black cube, but decided to wait until tomorrow to find a place where no one was. Did you go to the library, Maureen? Toby twitched his pointed mouse nose. Well, almost. Maureen yawned, peeled the candy, stuffed it into his mouth, took 2 bites, and his nose arched up and turned into a long elephant trunk. He suddenly realized that he was just a 2nd grade student. He shouldn't just try some fun magic at school and play some pranks with Hugo. Why was he always involved in all kinds of strange things? He woke up very early the next day. Hugo and Toby were still sleeping. Sweet had already made the bed, folded the sheets, and was about to go out with his school bag. Maureen remembered the fire and said quickly, Sweet, wait a minute. What's wrong? Sweet stopped and looked at Maureen inquiringly. Wait a minute, I have something to tell you. Maureen got up from the bed, put on his clothes, and then carried his school bag and walked out of the dormitory with Sweet. It was still 6 o'clock in the morning. Since Sweet's pet was no longer kept in the Forbidden Forest, Sweet no longer got up at 4 in the morning to go to the Forbidden Forest. A warm flame was still burning in the fireplace in the common room. There was no students there. Maureen thought for a moment and said, Let's go outside the castle. Sweet frowned, glanced out the window and said, The sun is about to come out. Maureen took out a kerosene lamp given by Fuzzlin from his pocket and said, This is what I got from the centaurs. I don't know if it will work, but it should cover the problem of your eyes glowing in the sun during the day. Things from the centaurs. Sweet was a little confused. Will this work? Yes, the centaur's fire is magical. I have one too. It can prevent me from getting lost and running to another place. Maureen stuffed the kerosene lamp to Sweet. You can try it outside, so you can see if it works. The latest novels are first published on 6th 9-book bar. Sweet hesitated for a moment and nodded, okay. The two of them walked out of the common room and walked up the spiral staircase to the first floor. The people in the paintings on the walls along the way were already yawning and stretching. Maureen and Sweet walked out of the castle gate and stopped at a willow tree on the hillside. Sweet was a little uneasy. He looked around and held the Muggle sunglasses in his other hand. It's still early. Maureen looked to the east. The sky was already white in the east, and the sun was slowly lifting the clouds and poking its head out. When the first ray of sunlight in the morning fell on Sweet, Sweet obviously flinched, but he also held the small kerosene lamp tightly in his hand. It really works. Very good. This is at least good news. Maureen handed a mirror to Sweet. Sweet looked at himself in the mirror in surprise. His eyes were normal, without any red light, and the two fangs did not appear. Thank you. Sweet looked at the rising sun in the east. I haven't looked at the sun for a long time. No need, Unran is the same as you. I think the three of us have something special in common and should help each other. Maureen spread his hands and told Sweet a way to keep the kerosene lamp burning. Unran? Is she the same as me? Sweet was puzzled. I didn't see her eyes glowing in the sunlight. That's what I want to know. Maureen told Sweet about Unran's situation, and then asked, when did your eyes get hurt? Why is Unran still fine now? Chapter 391 Sweet's Black Cube. Sweet heard it and said, I was 8 years old. At that time, I accidentally touched a strange thing. The box had a very strange magic that cut my hand, and then my eyes started to have problems. Strange thing? What is that? Maureen asked curiously. A black box. Sweet frowned and said, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just a strange black square box. Maureen was stunned for a moment and exclaimed, Black box? What black box? Sorry. Sweet hesitated and said, my mother asked me to keep the secret. Maureen simply took out a black magic cube wrapped in parchment from his pocket, spread out the parchment, revealing the black magic cube, and then asked, is this it? The black magic cube looked very dark under the projection of the morning sun, as if the sunlight automatically avoided the black magic cube. Sweet's face changed drastically, and his voice changed tone. How do you have this thing? He looked at Maureen with a very vigilant and suspicious look. I stole it from Lucas. Maureen did not hide anything and simply told what happened in the cemetery last night. Did you see Lucas last night? Sweet clenched his fists. Yes, there was a fierce battle. The old witch was very powerful and the centaurs were no match for her. Maureen thought for a moment and said, their goal was this black cube. I was just lucky enough to snatch it from them. Lucas was actually looking for this. Sweet was very surprised. Why was he looking for this? That's what I want to know. He has been looking for this black cube for some time and has several in his hand. Maureen looked at Sweet. Sweet's eyes flickered and his expression was also very wrong. Several? This thing has 12. If I guess correctly. Maureen nodded. Sweet's chest rose and fell slightly. He gritted his teeth and seemed to be hesitating about something. Do you know something? Maureen asked. Turn this box over and let me see. Sweet said in a muffled voice. Maureen looked at Sweet in confusion, then turned the black cube over. The texture of the black cube was very smooth, as if it was made by nature. It was unknown what material it was made of. When Maureen turned the black cube to the bottom, he was surprised. There was a mark on the bottom of the black cube, which was a pattern similar to a leaf. This mark is not. Maureen fumbled in his pocket for a while and took out the 12 patterns he had drawn. The mark under the black cube in his hand was exactly the same as the other patterns. If Sweet hadn't reminded him, Maureen would not have known that there was such a mark under the black cube. Sweet was silent for a moment, and felt that there was no need to hide this matter, so he said, the box I encountered before, it has 2 fangs at the bottom. Just like the fangs in your eyes. Yes. Sweet nodded. So that's how it is. Maureen nodded thoughtfully. This made sense. He remembered that the mark on the forehead of the smoke monster in the Forbidden Forest was the same as the mark that Unran showed in the campfire. That means the bottom of the black cube guarded by the centaur should be another pattern. Where is the black cube you touched when you were a child? Maureen asked seriously. My mother took it away. Sweet said sadly. She said it was a relic left by my father. Your father's relic? Yes. Sweet turned his eyes to another place. He disappeared when I was very young. My mother said he was dead. Sorry. Maureen suddenly had a strange feeling. He remembered that the centaurs in the Forbidden Forest had been guarding their black cube a long time ago, until it was stolen by Lucas recently. Could it be that the Sweet family was also guarding the black cube like the centaurs? Did your mother leave this black cube to you later? Maureen asked. Sweet shook his head. After my accident, I have never seen the black cube you mentioned. Even when she died, she didn't mention it. We must find it. You'd better check where your mother hid it. Maureen said seriously. Why? Is this black cube important? I don't know what this black cube is used for, but Lucas is looking for this black cube. Maureen said, if you don't want it to fall into Lucas's hands. The latest novels are published on the 6th and 9th books. Sweet hates Lucas, and there is a slight flash of anger in his eyes. I understand. Maureen was absent-minded in the potion class in the morning, thinking about the black cube all the time. Sweet was favored by Pangard because of this black cube. Some of his magical abilities are very special, and they must be the same as Enran's. This means that Enran is unlikely to be just a simple treatment for mags. Oh no. My eliminator is ruined again. A puff of smoke came out of Hugo's crucible. He waved his hand to sweep away the smoke. The eliminator, which was supposed to be colorless and odorless, now turned pink. The potion they were going to brew in this class was an eliminator used to remove various stains. This eliminator can also remove stains left by certain magic. Hugo was still a bit off when brewing it as usual. Lend me the potion you brew later as homework. I'm sure I won't pass this class again. Hugo leaned over and whispered to Maureen. Before Maureen could answer, Hugo suddenly exclaimed, Maureen, why is your eliminator green? Really? Oh no. It's over. Maureen came back to his senses. He had been thinking about other things just now and didn't pay attention to the problem of the eliminator. He quickly flipped through the book and checked the steps for making the eliminator. He found that he had added less black cow beans. Oh my god. I can't count on you for this class. Hugo sighed. Maureen was also a little depressed. He looked at the time and found that the get out of class was about to end. It would be too late to brew it again. He quickly began to add black cow beans and quickly modified it according to the instructions in the book. In the end, he changed the potion to light gray. I don't know if this will pass. Maureen put the potion into the bottle. He didn't have a top talent for potions class. He was probably the kind of person who could brew whatever Professor Theodore asked him to brew, but he couldn't innovate and draw inferences from one example. Lily's eliminator was brewed normally. Hugo pitifully asked Lily for one as homework for this class. Hugo, you really should be more serious. Lily didn't refuse Hugo. Anyway, she was used to Hugo. She looked at Maureen again and said in surprise, Mullen, why didn't you succeed in brewing the eliminator? You didn't get led astray by Hugo, did you? No, I was distracted. Maureen muttered. It's a pity that I don't have much, so I gave the rest to Hugo. Lily said regretfully. It's okay. If it's not up to standard, I can just make it again some other time. Maureen hurriedly handed over his potion. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 392, Arnold in the Painting. After a day of classes, Maureen was absent-minded. He was always thinking about all sorts of things and had no interest in the course. In the afternoon, when he was taking History of Magic, he went to ask Professor Binns, but Professor Binns still did not give him any more answers. Now he still had a black cube on him. This thing was like a time bomb, which made Maureen very uneasy. In the evening, he ran to the room of requirement on the 7th floor alone, ready to let Arnold hide the black cube. He was already familiar with finding Arnold in the painting. Last time Arnold gave Maureen a blank portrait, and Maureen hung it in the gallery that the room of requirement had turned into. So now if he wanted to find Arnold, he only had to shout at the blank picture frame twice to find Arnold in the painting. What's wrong? I'm having dinner. Arnold walked out from the edge of the picture frame with dissatisfaction. I didn't know you were still having dinner. Maureen said in surprise. Hey. Don't look at me with your worldly eyes. Arnok was picking his teeth with a toothpick in his hand. For you, your world is real, and for me, my world is real. We all have our own rules, but we just live in different worlds. You are right. Maureen remembered that every time he went into the painting, everything he saw was real. Maureen outside the painting felt that the world in the painting was fake, and the people in the painting also felt that the world outside the painting was fake. Arnok said that the truth and falsehood in this world are relative. Maureen suddenly frowned. What's wrong? What are you doing? Arnok asked with a burp. No, I'm thinking about something. Maureen looked at Arnok in confusion. He walked towards the ladder to heaven painting on the wall and stepped into the painting. The surroundings were filled with clouds and mist. He was already standing high in the sky, with steps under his feet. What are you thinking about? Arnok had already walked out of his own frame, jumped onto the steps above Maureen, and looked down at Maureen. He was wearing a bright red jacket today and looked very energetic. Maureen couldn't help but reach out and poke Arnok's round belly. The belly was very elastic and even warm, just like a real person. Don't tickle me. Arnok chuckled and pushed Maureen's hand away with his belly. I was just wondering why you look so real, Maureen said, touching his chin. If he didn't know that he was in a painting, he would probably think that Arnok was just an old naughty boy who liked to play tricks on him. Haven't I told you many times? I am real, this is my world. Arnok bit his toothpick and reached out to flick Maureen's head. You came to my world, and I am real to you. Why do you like to flick my head as much as Arnok? Maureen muttered. He suddenly thought of the abyss again and felt that something was wrong, because he also met Arnok in the abyss last time, and he was sure that the Arnok in the cabin was real, but he couldn't say for sure now. What if it was real, but only relative to the abyss? It's like the Arnok in front of him is also real relative to the painting? What's going on in your little head? Arnok asked. Arnok, have you heard of the abyss? Maureen asked impatiently. I haven't heard of it. Did my Arnok tell you about it? Your Arnok. Arnok laughed. This is really interesting. Maureen touched his head. I mean, did your original body, the Arnok outside, ever tell you about the place with 2 moons? Oh, you're talking about this. Arnok touched his white beard and blinked his blue eyes. He is him, I am me. I just run errands for him occasionally, which doesn't mean I know everything about him. Maureen was a little disappointed. He was still hoping that the Arnok in the painting could tell him some secrets. By the way, why did you come to see me today? You haven't seen me for a long time. Did you come to chat with me today? Arnok asked. Oh no. Maureen looked around. There were some other portraits in the studio. He felt a little unsafe, so he said, let's go to Arnok's house. Then I'll tell you. Okay. Arnok grabbed Maureen's arm, jumped slightly, and disappeared in the heavenly cloud ladder. When he reappeared, he had come to a warm little house. The latest novel is published on the 6th book bar on September 9th. He was already in the living room painting of Arnok's house in Hogsmeade Village. Maureen had not been here much since Arnok and his family left. Through the large window of the painting, you can see that the little house outside is a little dim, and only the moonlight shines through the window and falls on the ground. If you want to go to the living room, you need to go to the bathroom. But Arnok and his family are not at home, so Maureen doesn't need to open the bathroom door. He sat down on the sofa in the living room in the painting, and Arnok turned on the light to illuminate the living room. Okay, my home is the safest place. What's the matter? Arnok sat opposite Maureen and crossed his legs. Arnok told me that he wants you to take this. Maureen took out a black cube from his pocket, and he also brought a black cube into the painting. He handed the black cube wrapped in parchment to Arnok and said, hide it. What is this? Arnok untied the parchment, took a look at the black thing, and said with disdain, it's really ugly. It's ugly, but very dangerous. Maureen said, anyway, I went to a place last time, and Arnok told me that if I get this, I will give it to you to hide it first, and it can't fall into the hands of Pieng. Pieng? Is he looking for this thing? The expression on Arnok's face became a little more serious. Yes, by the way, Pieng is also hidden in the painting, you have to be careful. Maureen warned again. Don't worry. He doesn't dare to provoke me. Arnok pouted. Maureen then remembered that when he was in the painting, Arnok and Dumbledore in the painting were fighting against Piengard. Arnok's magic level in the painting was very high, and Piengard did not dare to underestimate him. Anyway, be careful. If he wants to use Black Dragon Bile or something to deal with you, at least you can't tell him where this thing is. Maureen said. I understand this. Arnok wrapped up the black magic cube and put it in his pocket. Wait for me to find a place to hide it. When he comes back, he will come to the painting to get it himself. Is that what you mean? Yes, then please, Mr. Arnok. Maureen thought for a while and asked again, yes, your magic is so advanced. Since Arnok is not here, can you teach me? Chapter 393 The Old Witch Who Cannot Be Found. You want me to teach you magic? Arnok looked at Maureen suspiciously. You are from the outside world, you should go to him. I don't know more than him. But I know more than me, Right. Maureen knew his own magic level. He was not afraid of competing with other Hogwarts students, but he was far from enough to deal with those experienced wizards. The Arnak in the painting had learned magic from the Arnak outside. Arnak was much more powerful than the wizards in other paintings. Even Paingird was afraid of him. So Maureen thought there was nothing wrong with learning magic from the Arnak in the painting. That's right, but it also depends on my schedule. I have to go to bed in an hour. I will play mahjong with someone tomorrow, play chess with Evan on Wednesday, go skiing with my wife all day on Thursday, and climb Mount Everest with Dumbledore on Friday. Maureen was stunned. Your life is really rich. Anyway, if you don't understand any magic, you can come to me. I can teach you a little, kid, but don't teach me too often. I have to be busy with my own things. Arnold hummed and sang a little song, and he seemed to be in a good mood. That's great, then let's find a place to fight. Maureen felt that he lacked combat experience. If he could find Arnold to practice with Arnold's eyesight, he would definitely know where his weaknesses were, and he could learn some new magic at that time. Okay. Arnak said with a smile, I have always wanted to change your hairstyle. Let me think about it. Last time I saw a wizard who was struck by lightning, his hairstyle was good. Maureen opened his eyes wide. Why did Arnak in the painting and Arnak outside have the same bad taste? The centaur's divination curse had been lifted by Anrin and him, and Hagrid forbade them to go to the Forbidden Forest again. Maureen actually didn't like to run to the Forbidden Forest. It was not suitable for him. But that night, the Muggle cemetery was turned into a pot of porridge, and the bones were scattered all over the place. It was inevitable that the Ministry of Magic would be alarmed. I just don't know how the Ministry of Magic will deal with this matter. After the Quidditch training on Thursday afternoon, he deliberately rode a flying broom to Hagrid and asked Hagrid about what happened that night. Are you talking about what happened that night? Things were terrible. Many Muggles saw the chaos in the cemetery and were frightened by the skeletons all over the ground. They also saw the centaur and me. Hagrid waved a shovel with a look of depression, shoveling a pile of red feces of unknown creatures into the vegetable garden. Then the Ministry of Magic didn't cause you any trouble? Maureen asked, putting down his broom. I told them about the situation. Lucas and that crazy woman, Moira. The old witch is called Moira. Maureen said, I remember I told you about it. Did you tell the Ministry of Magic? I did. They couldn't find any wizard named Moira at all. Hagrid stopped and said, couldn't find any wizard named Moira. Maureen thought about it and felt that it was not that surprising. The old witch was a very powerful arithmetic fortune teller. He went to ask Professor Victor yesterday, but even Professor Victor had never heard of this person. This incident has caused me a lot of trouble. Tomorrow I have to go to the Ministry of Magic to attend a hearing with Ronan. The Ministry of Magic is very dissatisfied with what the centaurs and I have done. They said that we shouldn't dig up Muggle graves. This is really nonsense. It makes it seem like I am willing to dig up other people's graves. Hagrid was very uncomfortable with the various rules and regulations of the Ministry of Magic. He continued to complain for a while, saying that the Ministry of Magic would not do its job properly, but would blame this and that, and like to find someone to take the blame and shut up the media reporters. That's the old witch's undead skeleton. The Ministry of Magic should be able to find it out, right? The old witch left in a hurry, and they didn't cover up the traces of the magic they cast. Maureen said. Yes, they found traces of magic from that crazy woman and Lucas. If not, they would have blamed me for the magic, but they still couldn't find the whereabouts of that crazy woman and Lucas, so they wanted to use Ronan and me to search for the two fugitives. Oh, these damn dung bugs. Hagrid muttered as he slapped a bug that crawled out of the red feces to death, and then continued, it's crazy. I said we don't know, but they have to summon us again and again. The Aurors of the Ministry of Magic really need to reflect on themselves. They have so many advanced magical instruments, but they can't find the whereabouts of two dangerous dark wizards. Hagrid complained like this, but Maureen knew that it was not a problem with the Aurors of the Ministry of Magic, but that the old witch was more powerful. An arithmetic fortune teller of this level would have more than enough time to cover up his tracks, and Maureen understood this well. Maureen thought of the centaur's bonfire and asked, can't the centaur burn another photo of Lucas to find the whereabouts of the old witch and Lucas? You know, just like last time. The centaur threw Lucas's photo into the bonfire and predicted the next plan of the old witch and Lucas. Maureen always felt that the centaur's bonfire divination was very magical, and it could even be said to be a very reliable divination technique. Ronan said that it can't be done now. The old witch has already prevented this. It's useless to burn any more photos. Hagrid kicked a stone away and said, "Principal McGonagall has forbidden me to take you to the Forbidden Forest, didn't she tell you?" "Oh, she did. She just invited me to have a cup of tea yesterday." Maureen shrugged her shoulders. Principal McGonagall was a very strict witch. She would not show mercy to Maureen just because he won the second place in the Dumbledore Cup. Things should be handled as they should be handled. This is Principal McGonagall's consistent principle. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. But Maureen is used to the principal's office. When he came back from Dumbledore's Cup last time, he went to the principal's office for tea and told Principal McGonagall everything about Lucas. But at that time, after criticizing him, Principal McGonagall praised his talent. But yesterday was different. When Maureen went there again, the first thing Principal McGonagall said to him was, "Why you again? Is it hard to be an obedient student?" Maureen didn't know how to answer. He could only sit there with an innocent look on his face, accepting the criticism seriously with a very sincere attitude. "Well, Christmas is coming soon. I hope you won't cause any more trouble. Go back quickly. Don't come to me for the time being. I'm really afraid of you now. I heard that wherever you go, there will be unrest. Last year, the train of Hogwarts was set on fire by a dark wizard. It seems to be related to you." Hagrid muttered and waved at Maureen, indicating that he should go back to the castle quickly and not come to the Forbidden Forest again, otherwise he would make trouble again. "It's not as serious as you said." Maureen muttered. "There is always a reason for everything. It's not his fault, right? Then goodbye, Professor." Maureen touched his nose. He had received a letter from his grandfather Alton. He would have a holiday next week and he would go home for Christmas. "Goodbye, I hope the train won't burn again this year," Hagrid said. "As long as no one comes to catch me." Maureen rode on the flying broom and flew to the castle. Chapter 394 Snowy Competition. The Christmas holiday is coming, and the whole castle is filled with a festive atmosphere. Many people are packing up to go home for Christmas. The last weekend before the holiday was the last Quidditch game of the first half of the semester, Gryffindor vs. Hufflepuff. During the game, it was still sunny at the beginning, but it started to snow heavily 5 minutes later, and the sight was almost unclear. Playing in such harsh conditions requires the player's cold resistance. Maureen played as a seeker, and he was almost frozen to death. Not to mention finding the damn golden snitch, even the quaffle and the bludger were not clear. The game was only half an hour in, and the players on the field were hit by the bludgers and fell off the broomsticks at least 20 times. Fortunately, it snowed heavily, and there was a thick layer of snow on the Quidditch field. They fell into the snow and only smashed a human-shaped pit, and they were not seriously injured. But the snow was getting heavier and heavier, and in the end even Hugo couldn't see clearly who was attacking with a ball. He could only distinguish the two teams by the different colors of their jerseys, so his commentary became, "A Gryffindor player, maybe Owen passed the quaffle to another Gryffindor, who passed the quaffle to another Gryffindor. Oh no, the third Gryffindor didn't catch the ball, he was hit on the head by the quaffle, and the quaffle was snatched away by a Hufflepuff, who passed the ball to another Hufflepuff, who caught the ball. This Hufflepuff and a Gryffindor collided with each other. Too bad, both of them fell down." The cheers of the students from the two colleges could not cover the surging momentum of the snow. Maureen shuttled back and forth in the snow, and had no idea where to find the golden snitch in such horrible weather. Later on, Maureen couldn't even hear Hugo's voice clearly, and there was only the sound of the cold wind whistling in his ears. "I really should have put on more clothes." Maureen was shivering with cold, because wearing too many clothes would greatly restrict her movements on the flying broom. Poker insisted that they all take off their coats, saying that they would be warm after flying. But flying did not warm them up, it only made them freeze like fools. The game lasted for a whole morning, and the golden snitch was not found. This was probably the longest game that Maureen had played since she participated in the competition. Quidditch games will not be terminated due to heavy rain or blizzards. Generally, large-scale games will not be played for 1 or 2 days. Usually, school games will only take 2 or 3 hours at most. However, today, when it was lunchtime, the two teams had not found the golden snitch, and many spectators ran back to the castle to have lunch. Maureen and his friends could only continue the game with an empty stomach in the heavy snow. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, The spectators returned to the court after lunch. Maureen and Newster still had not found the golden snitch. This game was already making people a little impatient. Poker was yelling at the others, as if he was going to change some tactics, but Maureen couldn't hear him at all, and neither could the other players. Everyone was flying around, exhausted. Both the Gryffindor and Hufflepuff players had lost their minds to continue the game. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Maureen, whose nose was frozen red, finally caught a golden snitch while shivering in the cold wind. When he caught a golden snitch, his hands were frozen and he almost let the golden snitch fly away. But because of the heavy snow, many people didn't know that he had caught a golden snitch, and they couldn't even see his figure clearly. In the end, Maureen flew tremblingly towards Madame Hooch and showed her the golden snitch, and the stamp game finally ended. 520 points versus 520 points, it's a tie. Maureen, I told you, we were behind in this game, you should have waited for us to score another goal and then caught the snitch. After the game, Pork was still chattering. He was very dissatisfied with today's game because no player listened to his instructions. Everyone just played their own game. They were thankful that they didn't put the ball into their own goal. Shut up. Pork, we're all frozen into snowmen. James and Albus hugged each other tightly, Lily was sandwiched between them, and the three of them were squeezed into a pile. The snot on Albus' face was frozen into ice chips, hanging on his nostrils, looking very miserable. I don't know what the score is, Pork, I can't care so much. Maureen's teeth were chattering. But this way, the score between us and Hufflepuff is not even widened. This game is a waste. Pork shouted. Everyone can't wait for this kind of game to end, okay? I just saw that even the Hufflepuff players are grateful to me for catching the golden snitch. If the game doesn't end, the audience will run to dinner. Maureen couldn't help muttering. After Madame Hooch blew a long whistle to signal the end of the game, it was the first time that Maureen received a grateful look from his competitors. The Hufflepuff players were so cold that they had no fighting spirit and wanted to send Maureen a bouquet of flowers to express their gratitude. They won the game, but no one was in the mood to cheer. They were lucky to survive in the heavy snow, and no one was in the mood to celebrate. Maureen ran back to the common room trembling, opened his school bag and took out his wand, sprayed a stream of fire to keep warm, and he couldn't wait to run into the fire. This was the kind of fire that Arnold taught him in the painting last week that could keep warm without hurting people. He felt like he had jumped from winter to summer in an instant. This fire is good. James and Albus also jumped into the fire quickly. Both of them exhaled a long breath of white air, and Albus even reached out to wipe off his thawed snot. Resurrected. Resurrected. Goalkeeper Bruno and Chaser Owen also rushed into the flames. Your fire magic is really powerful, Maureen. Maureen waved his wand and expanded the flames, and then all the Gryffindor players were warming themselves in the burning flames, and everyone was burning with flames. In the end, they walked back to the castle in the snow with their bodies on fire, like a fireman in the snow, becoming a beautiful scenery in the crowd. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. The Christmas holiday has begun, and all the students' luggage has been packed. Hugo and Lily went to the Weasleys' wagon shop in Hogsmeade as usual. Maureen and Anran climbed onto the train back home from Hogwarts together. Last semester was great, don't you think, Maureen? Anran dragged her light luggage and found an empty carriage. Maureen cast a lightning spell on her luggage. Because many students stayed in school for Christmas, the carriage was empty. Yet, it was great. Maureen yawned. He felt that this semester was terrible. Chapter 395 Holiday. Many people on the train were laughing and joking, and all kinds of fireworks were flying everywhere. A sparrow-shaped firework flew into the carriage where Maureen and his friends were. The sparrow-shaped firework flew around everywhere, and finally exploded above their heads, and paper pieces were scattered all over them. These fireworks are very interesting. And Rand said excitedly. Oh, I have some here too. Maureen opened his school bag and took out a lot of colorful small stones. These were the magical fireworks James gave him. As long as the small stones were smashed hard on the floor, the fireworks would be able to be set off. They blew up a lot of phoenixes, fire dragons, and all kinds of strange and magical animals. Some fireworks could turn into butter candies after the explosion. The two of them ate candies while setting off fireworks, which was quite pleasant. Anran held a jellyfish firework in her hand and asked curiously, I heard that the train at Hogwarts caught fire last year. Yes, it burned very vigorously. Maureen curled her lips, Probably to celebrate Christmas. We always need to burn something to liven up the atmosphere. Unran laughed. She thought Maureen's statement was very interesting. Has the arsonist been caught? Oh, you mean the arsonist? Maureen thought for a moment and said, the arsonist should have done it unintentionally. He must have been too nervous. He set the fire, a fire that even the Aurors couldn't put out, but he didn't tell anyone else about it. They talked and laughed on the train all the way. Hagrid said that wherever he went, there would be unrest. He thought Hagrid was overthinking it. At least this time on the train, except for Maureen's ear being bitten by a mouse firework, nothing dangerous happened. In the afternoon, the train stopped at London Station. Then see you after Christmas, Anran. Maybe I'll come to see you or something, but don't hold your hopes too high. I'm not familiar with the way Muggles celebrate Christmas. After saying goodbye to Anran, Maureen found Alton looking around in the crowd. How is it? Did you not get into trouble again after you went back? Alton asked with a smile as he took Maureen's luggage. Maureen thought of the battle between him and the centaurs against the undead skeletons in the tomb. How could he talk about such a thrilling thing everywhere? Principal McGonagall did not write to Alton about this matter, and the Ministry of Magic was not aware that there was a student like Maureen in the cemetery, so Alton did not know for the time being. No, Grandpa, I'm the most obedient. Maureen said seriously, if you say I won't get into trouble, then I won't get into trouble. That's good, let's go. We can plan how to spend this Christmas. I heard there will be a show at Fantasyland, which must be great. Maybe we can go and see it, or go to the Museum of Magical History. Alton began to talk to Maureen about his summer vacation plans. Maureen wanted to ask if his parents planned to come back this year, but seeing Grandpa Alton talking about various Christmas plans, he already knew the answer. Grandpa, these plans sound great. Maureen tried to pretend to be very happy. He didn't want to interrupt his grandfather's interest. If his parents didn't come back, they would have to spend this Christmas. There was no need to get upset because of him and ruin the mood of both of them. On the third day of the holiday, Alton had already woken Maureen up from bed happily. Where are you going, Grandpa? Maureen asked dazedly. Strange and Bizarre Fantasy Park. The first plan for the holiday. As you said, I got 3 tickets. You can take Anran with you. Let's go. Let's go. It will be too late if we are late. Alton waved his wand excitedly and lifted Maureen's quilt. You bought the tickets? I thought it was hard to buy this ticket. Maureen got up from the bed quickly. He told Alton yesterday that he also wanted to invite Anran to see what the magical fantasy park was like. Unexpectedly, Alton agreed so straightforwardly. Yes, I asked Fitch from the Magic Activities Department for help. He and I are old acquaintances. Let's go to Anran's house first and explain to his parents. His parents are Muggles, so it may be difficult to communicate. Alton waved his wand, and Maureen's clothes flew over and were put on Maureen. Maureen ran to wash up, then had breakfast, and took a cup of goat's milk by the way. Alton helped him squeeze the goat's milk into a bowl of bubbles, and also gave him a straw, so he didn't need to bring a cup. Let's go. Let me see. Anran's home is in Argyll County, right? I've been there a few times before. I remember a wizard cast a prank magic on the TV. It seemed like a movie was played, and a woman named Sadako crawled out of the TV, scaring the Muggles. Alton handed the ticket to Maureen. Really? Who is Sadako? Maureen took a bite of the sandwich. He could now distinguish what TV was and what movies were. Professor Adams taught him this, but he had never watched a movie. I don't know. It looks like a sloppy woman who likes smoky makeup, right? This woman is too lazy. She doesn't seem to like to dress up. She doesn't comb her hair or wash her face. She wears a white dress. I don't know why Muggles are afraid of such an unhygienic woman. Maybe they think she's too dirty. Alton guessed. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. Oh, so that's how it is. What did you do with her later? Maureen asked curiously. I thought she should dress up, so I used magic to dress her up. I combed her hair and washed her face. Oh, yes, I also cut her nails. Her nails were so long. I don't know what I was thinking. It was very unhygienic. Then I put her back on the TV. Alton said proudly, you didn't see the expressions of those Muggles at that time. They all thought it was incredible. They must have thought that this woman looked pretty good after dressing up. Sadako must be very grateful to me for doing this. That's amazing. But I heard that the things in the movie are fake. Maureen didn't know if his grandfather was right. He took out the Muggle phone and clumsily sent a text message to Anran, telling her to pick it up right away, and then opened the satellite map on the phone. He didn't dare to use the function he had created on his phone, otherwise Alton would know how restless he was during the summer vacation. Muggles are really smart. This map is very useful. Maybe I will consider buying a mobile phone in the future. Alton looked at the satellite map, then pulled Maureen, disappeared from home, and appeared on the roof of Anran Community. This is a 12-story apartment building. There is a park in front of the apartment. There are high-rise buildings on all sides. The scenery is very unique. Wow. You are here. Anran hurriedly opened the rooftop door. I just received the message and ran upstairs. Oh, hello, Mr. Walker. Hello, Anran. Alton said with a smile. Do your parents agree to let you come out with us? Anran stuck out her tongue. They have some concerns. Maybe you can help me talk to them. I don't think they will object. Let's go. I'll talk to them. I'm best at dealing with Muggles. Alton said confidently. I know Muggles very well. Yes, my grandfather even knows how to dress up Sadako in the movie. Maureen also nodded seriously. Chapter 396 Fantasy Paradise. The Briar couple seemed very nervous about Alton's visit, probably because Alton was too enthusiastic when he entered the house, or because Alton was very interested in the LCD TV in the living room. He talked to them about Sadako. Maureen didn't know how to deal with Muggles. He felt that the Briar couple seemed to be scared or something, but he finally accepted Alton's invitation. I will send Anran back in the afternoon, don't worry. Alton said with a smile. The Briar couple wanted to send them out, but Alton grabbed Maureen and Anran and disappeared directly in the living room. The Briar couple was so scared that they collapsed on the sofa, and it took a long time for them to recover. When they appeared again, they were on an unfamiliar street. Maureen had never been here before, and the people coming and going on the street were all Muggles. The shops on both sides of the street were full of colorful Christmas ribbons, and there were many Christmas gifts for sale. Many colorful lights were flashing, and there were green Christmas trees and Santa Claus at the door. Where is Fantasyland? Is it a large amusement park? Anran asked. In the opinion of Anran, who was born as a Muggle, amusement parks should be located in places with a large population, so as to attract more tourists. Oh, neither. This year, Fantasyland has come up with something new. Alton explained. Maureen didn't know what the so-called new thing in Fantasyland meant. When he was curiously looking at the Christmas items at the door of the Muggle store, Alton had already called the two of them to run to a plastic statue of Santa Claus on the street. The base of the Santa Claus statue was 2 meters high, with a huge sleigh on it. There was also an elk on the sleigh. Santa Claus was sitting on the sleigh, driving the elk and seemed to fly into the sky. This huge Christmas statue looked like a plastic statue of a Muggle. The Muggle seemed to be motionless, but when Maureen and the others approached, the Santa Claus statue on the carriage suddenly stood up, smiled and saluted at them, and asked them to get on the sleigh. It's a very interesting magic. Muggles can't see the statue moving, only we can see it. Alton and Maureen got on the sleigh together. Strange and bizarre fantasy park, a wonderful world will open up to you. The Santa Claus statue shouted and pulled the reins. The scenery in front of them suddenly flashed, and the elk started running, and the sleigh took them out. Wow! Anran couldn't help but exclaimed, are we really flying out on a sleigh? I don't know, I haven't been there either. Maureen shook his head. A few years ago I went to the fantasy park, and the performance venue was under the sea. Under the sea? Can it be held under the sea? Anran was surprised. This time it's not under the sea. Alton said, it's in the sky. In the sky. Anran felt even more incredible. You will know later. Alton said. The sleigh flew directly from the street to the sky, passing through rows of high-rise buildings. The cars on the street became smaller and smaller, and the pedestrians soon became like ants. The houses were smaller than the palm of your hand. Even Maureen had never flown in such a place. He used to fly around the school on a flying broom. Anran was very excited. She had only taken a plane before, but it was a very novel feeling to ride a sleigh in the sky and overlook the whole city. We are flying so blatantly, aren't we afraid of being seen? Anran asked. Don't worry, this sleigh has invisible magic and has been reviewed by the Ministry of Magic. Alton said, but don't just ride a flying broomstick at such a high place. Wizards often hit Muggle planes on flying broomsticks and damage them. Then will they help repair it? Anran asked in surprise. Otherwise it may crash. Wizards will also be unlucky if they hide a plane. Some wizards will directly apparate and run away, while responsible wizards will apparate into the plane to help with a forced landing. Anyway, in the end, the Ministry of Magic will come forward to solve the problem. If you have watched the news, you should know that your Muggle news often publishes planes with windshields broken by big birds in the sky, Alton said. Ah. That was done by wizards. And Rand sounded surprised, but Maureen thought it was no big deal. It was normal. The Ministry of Magic now has strict control over high-altitude flights, requiring flying broomsticks to limit their flight altitude and add magic to automatically avoid Muggle aircraft. The sled flew all the way over the city and flew to the high clouds. They passed through the clouds and could even see the sun above the clouds. The sled had a special magic that ensured that they would not feel cold or be attacked by strong winds. About 20 minutes later, a strange castle appeared in the clouds in front of them. The castle seemed to be parked above the clouds. There was even a rainbow hanging on it, and there were many magical animals flying around. Maureen could see unicorns and various flamingos at a glance, and even the shadow of a phoenix. It should be made by magic. There were many wizards around who sat on sleds and flew into the castle, suspended in the clouds. The castle was wide, and there were a few big words hanging on it: strange and weird fantasy paradise. The latest novels are first published on 69 Shuba. How could they move the house to the sky? And Rand asked in amazement. Magic. The wizard's fantasy park must have a special look to attract people. This fantasy park often changes its ways to attract audiences, and moving it to the sky is just one of them. Alton introduced. Their sleigh has flown into the castle in the clouds. This castle is different from Hogwarts. It is like a wide and lively market. It is surrounded by white clouds. There is a large performance stage on each huge cloud. On some clouds, there are beautiful and unrestrained vela dancing, which attracts a large number of wizards. There are also many winged fairies around who are distributing candy to everyone. Maureen also saw wizards standing in the mouth of a fire dragon. This bold performance is very eye-catching. If the fire dragon sneezes and sprays sparks, it will be grilled human flesh. However, the animals in this fantasy park are all tamed. There is a group of electric mice flying in the air. Their blue tails emit darks, which regularly form various wonderful patterns. There are also many beautiful birds gathered in a group. A wizard wearing a colorful hat made of phoenix tail feathers is holding a magic wand to command these flying birds to sing. There is also a huge sphinx in a cloud on the left, which is giving everyone a puzzle. If you answer the puzzle correctly, you can get some magical items. On the cloud on the right, there is a wizard who is directing a long living vine and a group of sniffers to perform acrobatics. There are some golden things hanging on the living vine. Those sniffers will chase those shining golden objects and do various interesting actions. The whole fantasy park is very magical. Not to mention Ran, who was born in a Muggle family, even Maureen finds it fun. They took a sleigh and circled between the clouds, occasionally stopping to watch the wizards in a certain cloud perform. This is the best Christmas vacation I have ever had. And Rand said excitedly. Chapter 397 Fantasy Paradise. The fantasy park is really magical. To celebrate Christmas, they cast many complex magics to move the castle into the air. Many of the magics are quite complex and profound, and ordinary wizards simply cannot do this. Maureen and his friends drove the sleigh around the castle and watched the performances on every cloud. Some of the magic was breathtaking. These magical performances are simply not seen in school. The most bizarre thing is that the performers in this fantasy park are not only wizards, but also invited extraordinary people from all over the world to come and join in the fun, whether it is a snake charmer from India, a pharaoh wizard from Egypt, or a ninja from Japan, and even a strange person from the East. The Indian snake charmer is a middle-aged man with a red turban, bare feet, black skin and a messy beard. His performance is very strange. He holds a strange flute in his hand and plays a strange flute sound. Next to him is a veiled woman with her belly exposed dancing with a snake, which makes many wizards in awe. What surprised the wizard the most was that this white snake was more than 10 meters long and had 5 heads. It coiled around the mysterious woman with a veil. The 5 snake heads danced with the woman, and the snake tongue in its mouth made a hissing sound. The woman was like a boneless person, dancing alone to the sound of the clear flute. Grandpa, are they Parselmouths? Maureen was not very familiar with the culture of the world, and he had never learned about these things. In the wizard world, most wizards who can tame snakes have a bad reputation. For example, The dark devil who couldn't even mention his name more than 20 years ago was a Parselmouth who was rejected by wizards, so the performance of the snake charmer was awe-inspiring. That's not the case. Wizards who can speak snake language are called Parseltongues, but the term wizard is limited to our area. People in different places have their own abilities. There are more monks in India who study Buddhism, and of course there are many snake charmers. Buddhism? What is that? I don't understand it either, just understand it this way for now. Their culture is not limited to Buddhism, they are also good at communicating with snakes, and the ability of people there to control snakes is far from as simple as our wizard world. Alton said. It's amazing. Maureen couldn't help but exclaimed. At this time, the five-headed white snake on the cloud was circling around the mysterious Indian woman, and then the third snake head in the middle suddenly swelled up and became extremely huge, then opened its mouth and swallowed the Indian woman. There was a cry of surprise from the wizards, and even Anran couldn't help but cover her mouth. Is she okay? Anran asked in a low voice. Maureen was not quite sure, and the wizards all whispered to each other, but the five-headed white snake was still swaying and dancing. As the flute sound became more and more urgent, the first head of the white snake suddenly became huge, and then opened its mouth, and the mysterious woman stood on the first snakehead's tongue. Wow! Awesome! All the wizards clapped their hands in amazement, applauding the Indian woman crazily, but the woman did not stop, dancing on the scarlet snake tongue of the giant snake, and then being swallowed, and then coming out of the mouth of the second snake head. Then the third, fourth, fifth. The Indian woman danced in turn between the 5 snake heads. This magical performance has shocked all the wizards. They have never seen the notorious snake in the wizard world actually form such a magical tacit understanding with a woman. The Indian snake magic is really amazing. Anran and Maureen clapped their hands desperately. There were many wizard students and children with them. They were all led by their parents to watch the performance here. This kind of performance can't be seen everywhere. Even wizards feel very surprised. At this time, a wizard host on the cloud was smiling and said, "This is a strange magic from India. It is different from our wizard world. The snakes in their world are psychic. Dear wizard children, don't imitate it easily. My sister has practiced it. Whether it is wizard students who have just started school, children who are not yet of school age, or adult wizards, they are all cheering for the performance on the stage. Let's go to see other performances." Their sled continued to fly in the air. Alton bought ice cream from Maureen and Anran at a winter ice cream hut. This magic ice cream has various flavors. Alton said that he didn't like to eat ice cream, so he bought a hot magic licorice ice cream for himself, and then continued to fly towards other clouds. They saw Egyptian wizards performing mummy magic. The mummies, who were wrapped in white bandages, were dancing all kinds of magical bandage dances. These mummies looked like humans, with only 2 dull eyes showing. Bandages were wrapped around them again and again. One mummy untied its bandages, and the bandages on its body became fewer and fewer. All the wizards were staring at it, wanting to know what the mummy looked like under the bandages. However, a large pile of bandages accumulated on the stage, and the mummy still did not reveal its body under the bandages, which made the wizard audience itchy. They wanted to take out their magic wands to help it and find out what was going on. "Grandpa, I heard that mummies are used to wrap the dead. These Egyptian wizards performing are not going to use the dead, that?" Maureen couldn't help asking. "Not necessarily. Real dead mummies have very powerful magic. Ordinary wizards can only make mummies from the corpses of powerful wild animals. Their Egyptian magic relies heavily on mummies. The magic of mummies is very strange. There are very mysterious symbols on those bandages. You can see them in the future if you have a chance," Alton said with a smile. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. "Hey, Maureen, I heard you say last time that your parents were studying ancient magic in Egypt. I thought you knew a lot about Egyptian magic," Anran asked curiously. Alton's smile froze, and he looked at Maureen with a somewhat uneasy look. Maureen was silent for a moment, then smiled nonchalantly and said, "I will find out in the future." Maureen did not go to see Alton. He had asked his grandfather this question for so many years, but he never got a better answer. His parents wrote again this year, saying that they were busy with work and couldn't come back for Christmas. Alton took Maureen out to play so that he wouldn't have to think about it. Maureen had his own emotions, but he knew who he should blame, and that person was definitely not his grandfather who always tried to make him happy. Let's go see the talented people in other countries. Alton changed the subject and signaled the Santa Claus statue in front of the sleigh to fly to the next cloud quickly. Chapter 398 Ninja and Immortal. In addition to the amazing Indian snake magic and the mummy magic of what is under the tangled bandages, the magical magic of Japan is also quite eye-catching. It is introduced here that Japanese magic is called ninjutsu. People there are not called wizards, but ninjas. Look at the flying darts, they are their ninja tools, kunai. Alton spread out the ticket, which was originally just a small ticket, and turned into a magical guide map. The guide map was cast with magic, and the introductions on the various cloud stages would emerge from the paper in the form of relief. Ninjutsu, I have never heard of it before. Maureen stared at the 4 ninjas on the stage with great curiosity. The decorations of these 4 ninjas are quite strange. There is a yellow-haired boy with 3 black lines drawn on each cheek, like a cat's whiskers, and there is a forward protector on his forehead with a strange symbol on it. Another ninja has white hair and wears a black mask. The forward protector on his head covers his left eye, and the other eye is like a dead fish eye, which feels like he has not woken up. Holding a book in his hand, he sat on the ground, reading seriously, with a look of indifference, completely immersed in the sea of books. It can be seen that he really loves to study. Sitting on the ground next to him was a black-haired boy with a cold expression. He was wearing blue clothes. He leaned against a box indifferently, made a few gestures reluctantly, and then spit out a large ball of flames from his mouth. These flames roared in the air and suddenly turned into cherry blossoms. Another girl with an especially bright smile was dancing in the sky full of cherry blossoms. Those pink cherry blossoms seemed to float around her like spirits, but the soft cherry blossoms suddenly turned into sharp kunai when they collided. These kunai flew around on the stage. Once the kunai collided with each other, they immediately scattered into cherry blossoms again. The boy with yellow hair was jumping among the cherry blossoms. He was walking on the cherry blossoms. He was agile. After a somersault in the air, he made a slight explosion, and a cloud of smoke enveloped him. Then a graceful woman appeared in the smoke. The woman who suddenly appeared was as beautiful as a flower. She was not wearing any clothes, and her skin was white and beautiful. However, the audience could not see what they wanted to see because the smoke always covered some key parts at the right time. Many wizards shouted for her to remove the smoke quickly to satisfy their curiosity. Then 7 or 8 beautiful women appeared in the smoke. They danced there, and the smoke followed them closely. Although they were not wearing clothes, they could not see their full appearance clearly. If it were not for the magic protection on the stage, some wizards would even want to pull out their wands and cast a smoke and dust spell. Go, 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 this is not suitable for children. Alton hurriedly took Maureen and Anrin away from this place. This kind of performance was not suitable for these 2 10-year-old children to watch. I heard from the Ministry of Magic last time that ninjutsu is actually not much different from our magic. Ninjas are more like warriors. They are born for fighting, but they are more limited in one aspect, such as only good at magic such as fire and water. Ninjutsu, our wizard's magic is more comprehensive. Alton explained. Their sled continued to fly forward and left this place. Are there usually these people in Fantasy Park? And Ran asked. They are not actors in Fantasy Park. You can't see them normally. These foreign talents are all strange and bizarre. Fantasy Park specially spent a lot of money to invite them to liven up the Christmas this year. If it were on weekdays, you would never have the chance to see them. I brought you here just to appreciate the cultural differences from all over the world. It's very interesting, isn't it? Alton said. Yes, it's great. Maureen nodded. Let's go see the immortals of the ancient Eastern civilization. Their culture is also very magical. Alton turned the flyer to the page about the East, and then let the Santa Claus statue lead the way. Immortals. Yes, there are also many people with special abilities in the East, but they are not called wizards, but immortals. Their abilities are not called magic, but immortal arts. Alton explained. Grandpa, the Deoai Academy you mentioned last time, is it a place dedicated to training immortals? Maureen asked. Yes, Deoai College, a very famous institution in the East. Alton nodded, but he didn't know much about this college. He only said that the immortals in the East were very mysterious. They soon saw 2 mysterious immortals performing something. There were also quite a lot of wizards around here, pointing and talking to the 2 immortals on the stage. Let me see, these 2 immortals, the young man is Luo Shuang, and the beautiful and lively girl is Lan Linger. Alton said it in a very awkward tone. What a strange name. Maureen muttered. The language of the Orientals is difficult to pronounce. Alton said. There were two people on the stage. They were both wearing very Oriental clothes. Luo Shang was wearing a long green dress, elegant and free, and Lanlinger was quirky and lively. The two of them stepped on a flying sword and flew across the stage. Why are they still stepping on swords? When Maureen saw the flying swords under the feet of the two people, he immediately remembered the big-headed circulagon he saw in the painting. That guy also waved a sword in his hand all day long. The characteristics of Oriental people, sword riding, just like we ride on flying brooms, they call it flying with swords. I heard that when they perform fairy arts, they will have a shadow of something called bagua on their bodies. Alton explained. As he was talking, the flying swords under the feet of Luo Shang and Lanlinger suddenly emitted a strange bagua phantom, and then countless flying swords split out. These flying swords fluttered and wielded various mysterious sword moves. Each sword move would create a golden ripple. A total of hundreds of flying swords drew sword shadows in the air in an orderly manner, looking energetic. The latest novels are first published on Liuji 9 Shuba. A small bagua light and shadow appeared between the fingers of Luo Shang, who was wearing a green shirt. The bagua was slightly emitting golden light. He shouted softly, Tianjin Guafeng Xingyu. The bagua phantom in his hand began to spin rapidly. Swish! 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 All the flying swords suddenly trembled slightly, as if being pulled by something. The flying swords emitted a sharp whistle and sped through the air. Then, the sword tips faced the sword tails, and they pieced together a shining bagua sword formation. This bagua sword formation was like a wonderful shield, surrounding Luo Shang. A strange sword energy flowed between each flying sword, and various strange sword shadows flashed between the sword energy, as if countless sword lights burst out in an instant, which was amazing. Lanlinger, who was standing next to her, had already jumped high on her flying sword. A small bagua phantom appeared in her hand, and the bagua phantom was spinning faster and faster. Zetu Green Beast Linkwang. The flying swords she controlled suddenly gathered together, chasing each other and spinning, like a whirlpool. The flying swords in the whirlpool spun faster and faster, and then a green light burst out. Crash! A green shadow rushed out of the whirlpool, stepping on a cloud of auspiciousness and rushing in the air, leaving a series of blurry shadows. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 399 Qilin and Shenlong. This is a magical green creature, with a lion-like head, but with a pair of majestic tiger eyes, antlers on the top of the head, a horse-like body, but covered with dragon scales, a row of flowing yellow mane on the back, a tail like a cow's tail, hooves stepping on the flames, landing behind Lanlinger, and gently making a melodious and clear sound. The sound is extremely deep, with a strange breath mixed in, giving people an inexplicable sense of security. As soon as this magical creature appeared, it attracted the admiration of many wizards. It looked domineering, but there was a trace of peace in its eyes. It seemed to understand human nature and lowered its head to rub Lanlinger's face. Qilin. A magical creature in the east, Qilin. Alton looked at the introduction on the brochure and was amazed. Neither he nor the other wizards present had seen this mythical beast. This mythical beast only lives in the east. It is said to be gentle and can bring good luck to people. Is this the Qilin? Molin also looked at the auspicious beast curiously. He had seen the introduction of the Eastern Qilin in magic books before, but the Qilin was extremely rare and had very special abilities. Seeing is believing, and he was really enlightened. Many magical animals in the East were also recorded in their magic books, such as the Zhaowu and the Gudiao, which were sometimes secretly extradited to the wizard world by some people. Those creatures were also quite magical. I don't know if this is a real Qilin. It is probably displayed by their magic. Alton guessed. When all the wizards were admiring this magical auspicious beast, Luo Shang on the other side once again had a phantom of the 8 diagrams in his hand. This time, the 8 diagrams lit up a golden vortex. As the 8 diagrams in his hand rotated, the flying swords around him suddenly dispersed. Feng Sun Long Ying Xiao Tian. Luo Shang shouted again, and all the flying swords suddenly gathered upwards. These flying swords were pieced together and put together, just like bones. More and more flying swords gathered over and condensed into a sword shadow that was 20 or 30 meters long. The sword shadow trembled slightly, and golden light bloomed from the flying sword. These lights lingered and intertwined with each other. In the flickering light and shadow, a majestic creature shook its body in the air, and then let out a shocking roar. Another mythical beast in the east, the dragon. Alton exclaimed. This dragon has a long nose and antlers, and its sideburns are flying. It is 8 points similar to the head of a unicorn. Its dragon whiskers are floating, but its body is winding and circling like a snake. The dragon scales on its body are staggered and dazzling. The 4 dragon claws are sonorous and powerful. It seems to be able to turn the stars upside down when it swings. The noble eyes are awe-inspiring. Is this the fairy art of the East? The tide of applause rang around. The appearance of this golden dragon made many wizards cheer. The flying dragons in their world are more like lizards, fierce and powerful, while the dragons in the East are more like long snakes, magnificent and majestic. Their sword-controlling skills are amazing. Maureen couldn't help but praise. Both the dragon and the unicorn were transformed from flying swords. Because these creatures are so rare, it is unlikely that these 2 people would bring them out casually. However, this strange sword-controlling technique really opened the eyes of all wizards. It's really amazing. If there is a chance in the future, we should go to the East to see the world, exchange cultures, and understand the cultural differences between each other. Alton also applauded. Mr. Walker, who do you think is more powerful among these immortals, ninjas, and us wizards? Unran was amazed, clapping her hands, and her eyes were overwhelmed. We have to understand that whether it is a wizard, an immortal, a ninja, or an Indian monk, they are all human beings at the root. The special powers gathered in our bodies are actually similar. For example, we call the special abilities in our bodies magic, immortals call this ability immortal arts, and ninjas call this ability ninjutsu. Alton's knowledge of this knowledge is richer than Maureen and Anran. He said enthusiastically, these abilities are essentially the same. However, due to the great cultural differences between countries and regions, there are different ways of using this ability. We use this power through magic wands, and ninjas use hand seals. I'm not sure about immortal arts, but they may be based on the 8 diagrams. It is said that the process of their development of abilities is the most mysterious, and it is far from limited to this. You can look at their sword-controlling skills to know. As for who you say is more powerful, it's hard to draw a conclusion. Alton frowned and said, the abilities that exist in our bodies are used in different ways, so there are definitely differences. For example, ninjas are good at fighting, but because different ninjas are generally only good at one aspect, their magic is far less diverse. We can use transfiguration to restrict them and apparition to escape. Many of our powerful protective spells are also impenetrable to their ninjutsu. We have learned more comprehensively and know all aspects of magic, but they specialize in one aspect, and we sometimes suffer losses in the aspect they are familiar with. As for fairy arts, it's even harder to say. They are powerful and mysterious, and have a rich heritage. The fairy arts they developed are said to be very powerful and will never lose to magic and ninjutsu. But it depends on the person. Since we are all human, we are bound to have weaknesses. As long as we grasp the weaknesses, anyone can defeat the other. We don't need to deliberately compare. We just need to master our own magic and learn it the way we want. That would be the best. Alton taught the 2 inexperienced juniors earnestly and explained the differences between cultures very clearly. It was Alton's concept that only the ability that suits oneself is the strongest. Oh. Maureen and Anran suddenly realized that it was unnecessary to compare such different abilities. Everyone has their own strengths. If they can make the best of their strengths and avoid their weaknesses, everyone will have a chance to defeat the other. The talents from all over the world are learning the essence of their own culture. You can learn whatever magic you like. You can also get familiar with the culture of other places. I have never dealt with the immortals in the East. I will take you to learn in the future. You should have a long-term vision. Alton said with a smile. Okay, Grandpa. Maureen nodded. There are many wizards in the fantasy park. Everyone is very interested in the talents from other regions. Although the tickets are a bit expensive, it is definitely worth the trip. The latest novels are first published on the 69th book bar. The Magical Snake Magic of India, The Strange Mummies of Egypt, The Ninja Group of Japan, and The Shadow of Mythical Beasts and Sword-Controlling Magic performed by Oriental Magic that were almost lifelike. These were the most interesting performances introduced by the Fantasy Park this year. It was said that their director had spent a huge amount of money to invite them. Maureen and her friends toured the entire park, and only when it was dusk did they reluctantly return to the city on a sleigh. Alton took Anrin back to her living room with his apparition, and scared the Brill couple who were watching TV in the living room. Then Merry Christmas. Maureen, see you at school. Anrin waved happily to Maureen, and said to Alton, thank you too, Mr. Walker, thank you for the ticket, I am very happy today. You're welcome, Merry Christmas. Alton snapped his fingers. Merry Christmas. Anrin, and Mr. and Mrs. Brill. Maureen greeted politely. Merry Christmas. The Briar couple smiled awkwardly, and it was quite forced. It was obvious that they were not very welcoming to the arrival of the two wizards. Maybe we will meet at the station again. Anrin is a very lovely girl. She and my grandson get along very well. Alton said with a smile, and disappeared into the living room of Anrin's house with Maureen. Anrin, you must go through the door when you go home next time. You can't just evaporate like this. After a long time, Mr. Briar murmured these words. Anrin blinked, not knowing what to say. Chapter 400 Dance Town. This Christmas was relatively peaceful for Maureen. He was not bothered by any messy things. He would follow Alton to visit other wizard friends from time to time, even some of his distant relatives. They were a pure-blood wizard family. Pure-blood wizards actually have some relatives if they traced their origins back a few generations. Alton was very popular and knew many wizards. Maureen could recognize almost all of them. But during Christmas, the staff of the Ministry of Magic were not so relaxed. There were always some wizards who liked to take crooked ways and disguise their dark magic items as various gifts to sell. Some of them were sold to Muggles as pranks, which gave Muggles all kinds of bad memories. For example, on the day before Christmas, Alton took Maureen to deal with a very strange prank. It was said that in a small town called Peters, Muggles suddenly started dancing. Grandpa, why do we have to interfere with Muggles dancing? Maureen was eating a dragon fruit in his hand. This dragon fruit looks like a flying dragon. When you eat it, it will taste like what you think of in your mind, so it's best to think of something happy at this time. They're all dancing in places where they shouldn't dance. It's very abnormal. Alton had already paraded with Maureen to a farm outside the town, and Edmund was waiting for them not far away. Maybe it's some kind of celebration ceremony? You know, different towns have their own different ways of celebrating Christmas. Muggles like to sing and dance. I heard from Professor Adams. Maureen's mind was now thinking of honey. The dragon fruit tasted like honey. But they all danced in places where they shouldn't dance, such as when eating, shopping, and when going to the toilet. Going to the toilet. Maureen was stunned for a moment, and quickly spit it out before the dragon fruit changed its taste. He could imagine that a Muggle hadn't pulled up his pants yet, and then started to dance touchingly on the toilet. It was really a pleasant experience. When they arrived at the farm town, the whole town was dancing in the street. The weirdest thing was that these Muggles didn't seem to realize that they were dancing. They were dancing to carry out their daily activities. A bus driver shook his head while driving, and finally even used his feet to operate the steering wheel. What was surprising was that he was able to drive while dancing without hitting pedestrians and other vehicles. He was undoubtedly a very professional driver. There were two white-haired old men on the side of the road who seemed to be arguing about something. They were tap dancing while arguing. It was rare that they were so agile at such an old age. There was a bald uncle in a suit and tie with a serious face who was seriously on the phone, saying something like the mayor will come to inspect next month. We must take this matter seriously and strive to get the government's funding. But he lifted up his clothes and danced belly dance with a beer belly. There were also two old women dancing striptease in front of the telephone poles, which was really eye-catching. It's amazing. This is a strange singing and dancing town. Maureen followed Alton and Edmund, looking around curiously. These Muggles continued their daily activities while dancing, as if they were not affected at all. I wouldn't think so. Edmund looked annoyed. Don't let me find out who did it, otherwise he will go to Azkaban and spend Christmas with the Dementors. This kind of magical accident, they also have to erase the memory to restore order and write a lot of reports. For Edmund, working overtime on Christmas is very inhumane. Stop the spell. Alton pointed at a young man who was dancing tango and shouted in a low voice. But his spell didn't work, and the young man was still dancing happily. No, it seems that we have to find the source of this spell. It may be a magical Christmas music box or something like that. We have something to look for, Alton said. The streets are full of shops decorated with Christmas decorations, and many small Christmas gifts are being sold. God knows where this kind of mischievous magic item is thrown. Edmund took out his pocket watch and moved the pointer. The pointer turned twice and stopped at the north, then turned to the east, and then turned to the southwest. There is a smell of magic everywhere. It is probably brought by these muggles. The pocket watch is useless. Edmund put the pocket watch away angrily. So many muggles are affected, so we need to start from the places where these muggles have been, such as shopping malls or bars, churches, etc. that everyone goes to, Alton said. Or the water plant. Muggles drink tap water, don't they? Maureen interrupted. In the past 2 years, I have learned a lot of Muggle knowledge. Although many things are still vague, I still understand some of the general things. Unlike before, I could confuse even refrigerators and TVs. Yes, the water plant is the most suspicious. No matter what, go and check it out. Edmund, you go to the church and the mall, and I will go to see where this water pipe comes from, Alton said. Maureen naturally followed Alton happily. He was here to have fun, so it was enough to just join in the fun. Oh my God, look, they can't even dance. As they walked through the street, a fat woman who was dancing a robot dance looked at Maureen and Alton with a pitying look. May God bless you. Another kind-looking priest had a cross hanging around his neck. While he was cheerleading, he took out 7 or 8 pennies from his pocket and stuffed them into Maureen's hand. The latest novels are published on the 69th book bar. Merry Christmas, child, God is with you, don't give up hope. The kind priest cheerleaded gently and left. Maureen looked at the pennies in his hand in a bit of astonishment. He didn't expect that someone would give him Muggle coins just because he couldn't dance when he came out to have fun. Why did they give me coins? Maureen asked incredulously. This magic is quite powerful. It makes these Muggles regard dancing as a normal habit. I guess in their eyes, people who can't dance are the same as beggars and disabled people, right? Alton guessed. Maureen followed Alton all the way. From time to time, kind-hearted Muggles looked at Maureen and Alton with pity, as if the grandfather and grandson were abandoned by God and suffered a great disaster. They couldn't dance. Several Muggles even forced colorful banknotes into Maureen's hands. Poor child, you can't dance. Take this £50 and have a good Christmas. A man in a jacket with his feet sliding around gave Maureen a large denomination banknote, patted Maureen's shoulder with heartache, and shook his head with a sigh. I like these Muggles. Maureen said excitedly, it turns out that you can make money even if you can't dance. It's really weird. Alton also had a large pile of money stuffed into his hand for no apparent reason. The 2 people who couldn't dance seemed to be regarded as unique and pitiful disabled people by all the Muggles on the street. The disabled combination of an old man and a young boy won the sympathy of countless Muggles. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.